session. I did send to him.
Did we start talking about the courthouse job as being the first public building? Did we get into that?
Well, we got into the Supreme Court building and the fact that you did that, and then the Chief Justice had asked you who to have run the building, and you picked out Tommy Thomason.
We didn't do the Supreme Court bill, no, but we bid on it. We didn't do it. I think they covered that.
Yeah.
And there's one other thing in there I think that I misquoted on. That when the tape comes back, we can correct it. I mean,
okay. Yeah, these will be brought back to us, and I have no idea the time frame, but when they do, we'll just sit down and let you, let you run through them and make your corrections, as we will Mark Young. Yeah. I'd like to lead into to start with this discussion of your exposure to Willis Carrier and how he helped shape and influence the growth of this industry here at Nashville.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Margaret Ingalls, and you mentioned the fellow Lyle out of New York.
Yeah, J.I. Lyle. Well, he was a Kentuckian, born and raised in Kentucky, and went to the University of Kentucky.
Okay.
And I think that's where Margaret Ingalls got involved. She was a Kentucky girl and graduated from the engineering school at Lexington.
I see.
So, but I called information, and there's no phone listed for Margaret Ingalls, and I'm afraid she's passed away.
I see.
But I have a good friend that lives there, and I haven't been able to contact him.
But
if he can find out for me.
If she were alive, would she be in Lexington, Kentucky?
Yeah. She might be in a apartment complex somewhere by now, you know. She owned her own home at the time I was visiting with her.
Okay. All right. You mentioned that Willis Carrier came down here, and you put on a little session with him doing the speaking at the B&W cafeteria. And
what we did, we had a meeting, public meeting. Well, it wasn't public, it was an invited meeting of the business people and the engineering profession in Nashville, and we had it at the Andrew Jackson Hotel by luncheon.
okay.
But I had breakfast with him at the B&W cafeteria the morning he was here. He and the gentleman had come down with him, Mr. Pickle, I believe, was accompanied. And after the breakfast luncheon is when we went over the B&W job, and he was very complimentary of it, and helped to pick out a little bug that was up in the heating part, which required a new vent valve. Very simple adjustment.
In this book by Margaret Ingalls, I have been reading that it was in the early 1900s, like 1905 to 1910, that he had been doing this work with dew point control using air washers or spray, mist generation, and mist eliminators to control dew point in textile mills.
That's right.
So there's been some conditioning of air, i.e., when we say that, I'm saying, all right, cooling conditioning of air and dehumidification conditioning of air. Pretty good bit of experience by the time the middle 1930s rolled around.
Yeah, well, actually, in the early 1900s, when he was working for Buffalo Forge, he got involved in this conditioning of air. As a matter of fact, he was the developer of the psychrometric chart on which all air conditioning today, around which all air conditioning today is designed. His psychrometric chart that he developed through laboratory experiments. But Buffalo Forge at that time decided, they told he told the officials of Buffalo Forge how much it would cost to get a research lab set up and start developing air control. And they, after looking at the figure, decided it was too much money, and that they didn't want to set up a department for that purpose. And that was when Carrier made up his mind that he would go out on his own. And Lyle was a New York sales representative. I got it from Buffalo Forge, and Lyle joined him, and Murphy, I don't know whether he was with Buffalo Forge or who he is with, but Murphy also agreed to join in on it. And then there was a gentleman by the name of Stacy, and I think they're all listed in there.
I was looking to see if I could pick out these names in this book.
We on tape now?
Yes, we are. Carrier, Lyle, Stacy, and Heckle.
Heckle.
Yeah.
That's right.
And Heckle was an engineer who had come to Buffalo Forge in 1905. And Stacy was the fellow who made the drawings of a job called the Wayland Mill. May 28, 1907. Job contract for $3,100.
How about Murphy? He's in.
I haven't run into him yet in this.
He was the Chicago representative, I think, for Buffalo Forge.
I see, but evidently these big city reps could see the impact of this technology.
And articles began to appear in the magazine that I was getting as a result of being a member of NAPRE. Their magazine at that time was published, I think, either monthly or semi-monthly, called Ice and Refrigeration. And I began to read about Carrier and that journal. Mm-hmm. It had all the up-to-date new equipment and the designs in refrigeration, and when air conditioning come along, where then they picked up the air conditioning phase of it. And the thing that amazed and attracted our attention at that time was the centrifugal compressor that Carrier had developed for the air conditioning industry.
Now you're talking about, this would be a large centrifugal.
That was the large centrifugal compressors, which were primarily designed as a reverse operation of the steam turbine. It had turbine wheels in it, similar to a steam turbine, but they reversed the flow. In other words, they were taking the vapor off of the evaporating side of the air conditioning system and pushing it through condensers and recondensing it and recirculating it and using it. Whereas the steam turbine worked off the pressure side, and the exhaust side went through some arrangement of cooling, and the water was recirculated in the boilers and reused, or the low side of it was used to do steam heating, say 5 pounds of it, 3 pounds of steam, and it'd go through the heating system and then back to the boiler.
So the steam turbine was in common use then.
Yeah, it had been for years.
And he was he using the same kind of wheel, or did he design his own wheel?
No, I think he used a similar wheel to what come out of the turbine, the steam turbine. But you see, DuPont developed F11 for the air conditioning compressor. And F11 operates on much lower pressures. And it worked ideal, like say, for the high side of the travel, the return side to come through the turbine wheel and discharge into the condenser. And it lower pressures than anything else that had been developed at that time.
So did that come first? Did the refrigerant development of F-11 come before he developed?
I think that he got DuPont to develop F-11 during the process of
he was looking for something.
you see, what the steam turbine traveled at high speeds, so the refrigeration compressor had to come through a gearbox off of a motor. Say take the 1800 RPM motor, it would go through a gearbox, and the speed of the turbine would go up to 3,000 or 4,000 RPM. So it was just a reverse process.
What intrigued you about that? I mean, you had reciprocating compressors. It would seem to me that a centrifugal compressor would want to be, at least today, it's 100 tons and up. It's not a small system component at all. It's a large system component. And I would have thought in those days you would be dealing with, a movie theater or a church, 30, 40, 50 tons, that sort of thing. And the reciprocating compressor would have been good for that, and you might not be looking for something else.
Well, along in the early 30s, York and Frick, seeing the future in the air conditioning system and the use of compressors, they redesigned the ammonia compressor so it operated on Freon. And then I think Prochel, who Carrier acquired, they built a small reciprocating compressor, and they used some of those. But Mr. Carrier could see the piston type of reciprocating compressors would have to be so large that they needed to get into a smaller type of system that do large tonnage.
Okay.
And now they can develop a 1,500 to 2,000 ton turbine or compressor that don't take up near the space that they'd have to have an old style piston machine.
I see. So it was.
In other words, they could a 300 or 400 ton machine wouldn't be along at the end of the table and wouldn't take up much more floor space.
Okay. I can see that.
But it wasn't practical to go below 100 tons. The cost of the centrifugal machines, when you got down below 100 tons, was not as practical as going on. And today, there's not many centrifugal machines made that go below 100 tons, unless they want to pay the difference in price.
Yeah. Okay.
But as I told you, I think I told you the last time I saw Mr. Carrier, did we talk about that?
No, we haven't. And
Well, okay.
anything you can.
Well, let's just get into that a little later.
Well, I would like you to focus on Mr. Carrier and other of the pioneers whose names sometimes became company names. You mentioned the Frick Company in your earlier conversation. But talk a little bit about your relationship with Mr. Carrier. And you got involved here with the Buford brothers.
Yeah.
And with the Carrier distribution line.
That's right. I think I told you that I entered into that deal on a percentage basis, more or less as a partner with Buford Brothers. I was not a salaried employee of Buford Brothers, but I was a percentage. I had it on the distributorship on a percentage basis, and they were doing the.
Okay, that was.
It wasn't coming in too good back there, was it? Kind of weak.
We'll try it again. All right, we're talking about the Buford brothers, and you getting on with them, and I said that was a pretty good plum that you had worked on, and you were talking about Mr. Gant here in town and his influence on that decision, I guess, by the Carrier people to go with you here in Nashville.
Yeah. Did I get into, I think I got into the background of Buford Brothers, that George Hearn, who was sick business doctor is what we call them back in those days.
Sick business doctor.
And he had to take over Buford Brothers. And for the bank, I presume he was with the First American Bank. And he and I had been friends for some time prior to the time this thing all come up, 4 or 5 years maybe. Matter of fact, he had to help out the Richmond Golf Club at one time, and I was a member out there. And he had me on the committee with him as the chairman of the Greens Committee. And he was trying to help Richmond out with their problems, and then that was about the same time that he had the Buford Brothers and a number of other companies here in Nashville. Well, the company got in trouble while he was a bank there. He would go down and take them over and guide them along, and of course they'd elect a president of the corporation. He didn't get involved as an officer, but he was sort of a guiding light and a financial advisor. So that's the way he got into the picture.
Okay. So let's see if we can continue on with that. You mentioned Gant. Tell me a little bit about Gant. He was with York Heating and Ventilating Company, and he had Nashville roots.
Yeah.
Okay. He had a brother in Nolensville that had a lumber mill and 2 sisters that were school teachers.
That's right.
How did Gant enter into this equation?
Well, he was Secretary and Treasurer, I believe, of York Heating and Ventilating, and one of the stockholders.
Okay.
And of course, when they merged with York Heating and Ventilating, their prime objective was to acquire the air handling mechanism ability of York Heating and Ventilating, which they did not have with Carrier at that time. They needed to take that industry to build the air handling side for Carrier.
The air side for Carrier.
Yeah, the air handling.
What was Gant's first name, do you know? Paul Gant.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've tried to get a hold of his brother or some of the family out at Nolensville and see if he's still living. The last time I heard from him, which is only about a year or two ago, through Larry McCrow, who was the engineer and superintendent for Carrier on the courthouse job. And I've become pretty well acquainted with him while he was here, because he was here maybe a couple of years putting that courthouse job in. And he told me when he was here a couple of years ago that Paul was still living and was in good health. And he lived out in the country, away from Philadelphia, out there somewhere. And I've tried to get hold of Larry on the phone, and I haven't been able to get hold of him.
Does he live here?
No, he lives out in Philadelphia.
Okay. Gant lives out.
Yeah. He left Carrier and developed his own company, which had to do with the purification of equipment of air in machine shops, and taking the vapor off of machine blades.
Oil mist.
Yeah, oil mist.
Okay.
We're going all right there.
Let's try it some more, and we'll see if we can get through this thing. Okay. Okay, so but Gant was now...
Suspect is you may have something wrong with the unit, but I don't know for sure.
You have a service family?
Oh, we don't work on
You don't
those.
work, you don't
No,
work.
sir. Sure don't. Well, rats. Still dead.
Here. No, it's running.
It's going right now.
Yeah, it'll run, but then it runs for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then it kicks the buttons out.
86. Maybe a problem with the unit.
Is it running now?
Yeah, it's running now.
Let's see how far it runs.
I was going to see how long it takes to kick out, but you fellas don't have a way to... But it isn't the batteries at any rate, is it?
No, they tested out good, so
Hang on a second, let me try to find this, okay?
that's why I was suspecting it might be something else with the machine.
Well, okay.
You want to
let us head back there. I'll leave this thing run while we're going. If it kicks out, then we'll just have to do this another. This thing set up again. I hope it doesn't really rattle their ear. Okay. We're rolling. Still with MT Gossett. We're hoping this tape machine will keep rolling. And we had talked about Gant. Maybe it's Gant that's giving the tape machine a problem. And you thought he might still be living up around Pennsylvania, in the country up around Pennsylvania.
Well, and I told you that Larry McCrow was a job superintendent for Cary, and he also worked for Cary for a number of years. And I was trying to reach him, and he lives around Philadelphia now and had a business of his own, which we got in there with, I think, had to do with air conditioning, the air and machine shops by taking out the mist from the lathe and machine operation.
Okay, this is what Gant got into after he left.
No, he didn't. That was what Larry McCrow.
Larry McCrow got
He was an engineer who came in from England.
Okay.
He was an English boy that went to work for Cary. And he was a graduate of one of the engineering schools out of England, I believe. Come over here to work for Cary.
Okay. So Carrier now is but his company is up and running. He had developed the centrifugal compressor. This is by 1934 or 5, right?
Well, he developed that centrifugal machine. I'd say back around the 1950, right in there somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been reading about this in this journal.
Yeah, I've been reading about it in the Ice and Refrigeration Journal,
Okay.
which was the official journal of the NAPRE, National Association of Power and Refrigerating Engineers.
All right. And now you Harrier franchise. You're working for Buford Brothers under commission. What early jobs did you get involved in, and what were you trying to sell? It wasn't really what we call packaged equipment yet at this time, was it?
There's very little package equipment being sold at that time because they hadn't really developed the window units. They developed some old window units that used water circulation. They hadn't hardly gotten into the air-cooled window units. They had those, and then they had gas-fired heating equipment for residential application, which was a very fine piece of equipment. As we got into the 30s, well, then they were doing they developed the centrifugal machine as we approached the 30s, where they were doing a lot of business in the centrifugal. That's why they had the Cary Engineering Company, because they were installing their own equipment at that time and doing their own contract work and manufacturing the centrifugal machine to do it. That job was run 150, 200 tons an hour.
Okay.
In fact, they put a lot of those centrifugals in the gold mines and diamond mines in South Africa. And that was one of Mr. Carey's main projects, was engineering those gold mine and diamond mine operations in South Africa.
Well, there must be some kind of air conditioning problem. They're what, 115 degrees down there in those mines?
Yeah, around 150 degrees. Further down in there they get, of course, the higher the temperature. That and the humidity problem just makes it hard for a man to work down there. In fact, I don't think they work down there more than maybe an hour to a shift, and then it comes back up to the top of the ground, an hour, maybe, no, not over two, maybe a couple hours. But they changed the shift, come up and stay out of there and go back. So they couldn't stay down there too long.
Okay. What, now that you were working with Buford Brothers, were you looking to apply the centrifugal compressor on large design jobs?
Yeah, we did some. We didn't get into the centrifugal jobs until after World War II. So as we got further into the 30s, up in the 30s, we began to see the handwriting on the wall that the big industry is going to have to start manufacturing war material.
Yeah. Okay, so as you approach 1938 and 39, the pursuit of domestic cooling waned. You
Yeah.
realized you weren't going to get the equipment to do that.
That's right. Going back to that, the first large centrifugal job in Nashville was the courthouse. And while we were Buford Brothers, we assisted in that. Their engineering department was set up down there in our building. And I worked with Larry and the pro and helping him out with situations that come up on the courthouse jobs. They had changes from time to time and so on. But that job was started in 35, and I think it's finished in 37. It's about a 2-year job.
Okay.
Let's see, well, it started in 33 and it was finished in 35. That's 34. Yeah. It took about 2 years to build
This
the
was
courthouse.
a centrifugal chiller.
Well,
water
that
chiller.
was that's about a 300-ton centrifugal chiller on that job.
Okay, so that was the first centrifugal you mentioned.
I believe that's the first large centrifugal job that come into that.
Centrifugals were used primarily, almost exclusively, for comfort cooling as opposed to refrigeration applications.
Yeah, as far as I'd say they were primarily used for that. So they probably did some refrigeration jobs in the large industrial centers, process work, but primarily the process work was primarily in the paper industry and in the chemical industry. DuPont was a big user of centrifugal and all the different chemicals in the products that they manufacture.
Did you do any work out here at DuPont, or was that, I guess DuPont didn't come on the scene till the 50s here, did they?
The DuPont coming in World War I.
Did they?
Yes, sir. That plant out there was built, I forget how, it had a unheard of number of days from groundbreaking to the time they were manufacturing powder, but it was outstanding.
Okay, so they were making gunpowder out here.
As they come in here manufacturing of powder, explosives for the war industry, World War I.
World War I, okay.
Yeah. But they did, back at that time, they were using the old horizontal piston-type compressors for their, and some of those are still out there installed. I think they might have been Brunswick Rochelle, or the people who were carrying, acquired after they got started in Carrier Corporation manufacturing.
You want to pursue your work with Buford Brothers and your relationship with the Carrier people, or would you want to pursue other parts of the air conditioning technology, high-pressure ductwork and air distribution and that sort of thing?
Well, we might pursue a little further the installation of some of the early important jobs, if you'd like.
Yeah, let's do that. I want to be led by what your interests are.
In other words, I think the first job we did was for the First American Bank, just in their bookkeeping department. It was one of the early bank jobs. But the first bank that was air conditioning completely as a bank was the First National Bank of Clarksville and the Southern Trust Company. They were actually, as far as I know, the first bank job that was installed in Tennessee.
And they were using what kind of equipment?
Well, they were using carrier. At that time, carrier had begun to develop their package equipment. That is, package air handlers, and this was made by the York Heating and Ventilating Division. They would come into play then, and the smaller compressors that carrier developed.
Okay. Was the name Carlisle as a compressor involved at this time or not?
No, Carlisle didn't get into the picture until, I'd say maybe 10 years ago.
Okay, so they're more recent.
Yeah.
Compressor.
What Carrier was doing, they were buying Copeland compressors primarily, and putting them in the package units. And their demand got so large for compressors and other people's demand that they developed the Carlisle compressor company, which is the 10 type they call them now.
Okay, so you started air conditioning banks and you were beginning to use packages, a fan section, a condensing section that was matched to the fan air handling section. Okay. Other people on the scene at this time, was Train in the picture at this time?
Train was still primarily in the heating business in the early 30s. They didn't really get heavily into the air conditioning picture until after World War II.
Okay.
They got into in the late 40s. Of course, they probably had the equipment already designed. Their centrifugal was probably already designed, but and being built for whatever purpose was needed during the war. But they didn't get into the comfort cooling business heavily until after World War II. As a matter of fact, Carrier didn't either. The comfort cooling was just almost out of the picture, unless it's a hospital
During the war.
or a manufacturing plant required.
Do we have any hospitals here that were air conditioned during the First World War?
I don't recall any jobs that were done. There might have been some operating rooms. I think we did some operating rooms at the Baptist Hospital, either right before World War II or during World War II.
Okay.
We did the first operating room out there.
Okay, so it was primarily heating and ventilating in hospitals to that time.
That's right.
World War II, did you have any hospitals that then got air conditioned even during the war years?
I don't recall any in Nashville
Okay.
that got into complete air conditioning.
So the war years, well, starting in the late 1930s, sounds like the comfort cooling industry was dead in the water, at least here in Nashville.
Yeah, during that period of time, we got involved in installing refrigeration on submarine chasers. National Bridge Company was building a submarine chaser.
Okay, so you got involved
We got involved.
as part of the war effort,
Yeah,
providing air conditioning. What were they? Oh, they were cooling the interior of it wasn't a submarine. It was above the water ship, right?
Yeah.
But they would cool the innards of the ship.
Well, yeah, they did that most with ventilation. What we were doing was installing equipment for food preservation, refrigeration rooms.
Okay, so
Now, we did do one very interesting job at the beginning of the war, and that was the Stinson aircraft plant, which was built here, which is now Avco. Now, we did that building out there at the beginning of World War II. The Stinson Aircraft Company come in here and set up manufacturing dive bomber But
Were they building the whole thing?
yeah, they come in, and Stinson, you know, was a great pioneer in the aircraft industry. I don't know whether you remember that or not.
No, sure I don't.
But he come from Wayne, Indiana, Wayne, Michigan, and he was killed in an accident of some sort. I don't remember what it was, but his sister was interested in the business, and his wife, I believe. And when Stinson Aircraft opened here, their plant was finished. Mrs. Stinson stayed here for a while until, I'd say, during the war effort and when the pressure was on for more production, they were taken over by some other plant, and I can't recall for a minute who it was. They'd come in here and building the dive bomb. I don't know whether you remember it or not. But that was the type of airplane that carried 2 or 4 bombs under the wing, and they'd probably go in at a high altitude, and then they call them dive bombers because they'd come in and just come right straight down on the target and release their bomb.
And then try to get out of there.
And then try to get out of there as quick as they could.
Yeah. I bet they tried. Going back in behind a bomb like that, much fun. Well, I have heard the name of a Stinson dive bomber, and I didn't know it was manufactured here.
Yeah, that's right.
At the end of World War II, kaput. They were kaput at the end of World War II?
Stinson?
Yes, sir.
Well, they were acquired by Avco somewhere along the way there,
Okay.
and the plant much enlarged to take care of framework and wings and rudders and so forth, components, body components for aircraft, the large planes as they come along. And today, I presume they are the biggest builder of wings.
Airplane wings.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
For
built.
all industries. I mean, I don't know how many they built for Boeing, but it's a tremendous lot of them.
Yeah.
And then the C-5 is the big
Cargo
load
transport.
carrier.
Yeah.
Well, they built it all the way for the C-5.
Okay, well, let's get back to refrigeration. In the personalities involved, you had a pretty good extensive contacts with Willis Carrier as a businessman after that. You evidently had knew Margaret Ingalls fairly well, and her engineering work with Carrier. Can we talk about any of that?
Well, of course, when Mr. Carrier, immediately after Mr. Carrier's visit here, when we had all the businessmen and engineers and probably manufacturers' agents for a luncheon, immediately the interest in air conditioning.
Okay. The interest in air conditioning after that luncheon perked up here in town.
Well, that's right. It created much more interest in it.
Uh-huh.
And I have a list somewhere of all the people that attended it. It's very interesting. And Mr. Carey, of course, he was more thorough in his engineering work and things like that than he was in the overall business phase and the financing phase of the industry. His best bet, so to speak, was in design and engineering.
Well, he sure got into it early and made some very startling and significant contributions early. And he was very thorough in his engineering.
Oh, yes. I got more and more acquainted with him because at the beginning in 1934 they started having annual sales meetings. And Mr. Carey was always very active in phases of the sales programs, and he was always, practically all of them, and took great interest in that, and he took great interest in helping anybody that had an engineering problem, and that's where I got more and more acquainted with him. There was engineering problems that come up in the industry, and if any of the distributors had problems, he liked to know what they were and help work them out. It was in the equipment.
An engineering mind like that goes from one advancement to another. Can you recall his interests and his change, and as he solved one problem, moving to another? I mean, he did a centrifugal chiller. Then what did he get interested in?
Well, he was primarily interested in the development of air handling equipment and development of larger centrifugals, and then that took a great deal of his time.
Okay.
I'd say that in 1934, when we took this B&W job that we've been talking about into the factory, the sale of it, that was probably one of the first jobs that had been sold with all carrier equipment on it and packaged air handling.
As a carrier project, huh?
Because Murphy, who was in Chicago, bid on the B&W job in Memphis just a year before that. And he was bidding it pretty much like we were with the Nash Machine Company. He was bidding it with built-up components that they would require from some other source. They didn't have the packaged units available even for that job.
And that preceded our B&W cafeteria by what, a year?
1 year.
One year.
About 1 year. By that time, they had developed these packaged units and small compressors, where they might have had them developed in the developing stage, but as I recall, they didn't have the packaged air handlers. You had to buy fans and build up the weather makers, air washers systems on the job.
Tell me about Margaret Ingalls. She was with Carrier during this time?
Yeah, she was. She was with Gary even when they were down in Newark, New Jersey, when they acquired the old GE plant. I think that we talked about that once before. At the time that Carrier bought the old GE plant in Newark, New Jersey, and that's where they started building package equipment. So they brought York Heating and Ventilating over from York and set it up in that plant over there, producing air handling units.
Okay.
After they got underway real good. Or they might have continued to produce them over there and assemble them in Newark, New Jersey.
Okay.
But Lyle came into the picture, at that time, and I believe he was instrumental in getting Margaret Ingalls up there to assist Mr. Carey with his paperwork.
The engineering shop drawings and that sort of thing?
That and his correspondence, which had to do with design,
Okay.
take care of probably the paperwork for him. So she understood the principle of air conditioning, and
Could relate to the technical terms that he
That's
dealt
right.
with all the time.
yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And help him out with some of those techniques. It wasn't anything unusual to see he and Margaret Ingalls sitting opposite each other on a desk with slide rules. Slide rules was all we had back in those days. We didn't have any computers. But they get those slide rules out, and you'd see them working problems together on that basis. And in fact, the last time I saw him, he and Margaret Ingalls were sitting in the backyard of his home out up in Cherry Valley of Syracuse. And they had a table out there, and both of them had slide rules, and they were out there working on problems there. And he told me that he was trying to develop a small centrifugal machine that could be used instead of on jobs, say 25 tons and up. It would be very practical.
Smaller centrifugal.
In fact, I remember he put his hands up on the table, desk, and he said, I'd like to see a centrifugal machine just about like this and this. It took up just a very small amount of room and could be put into the package units instead of having to do a lot of piping around on the jobs 25 tons and above.
I guess if you're going to get a machine package that small, you're going to have smaller wheels, and to get the compression, you're going to have to go at tremendous RPM.
Oh, there'd be little bitty rollers, no bigger than that. And they're connected to a 25 horsepower machine and a little gearbox on it. Of course, that's where the problem was, that to getting a small machine. The cost of just a gearbox to get from 1,800 to 4,000 or 5,000 RPM would be pretty expensive. Now, during the war effort, they designed a small aluminum lightweight compressor for air conditioning airplanes. That started during the war effort for the transport planes that they were using through the air during the war effort.
Okay, now
I'm talking about the personnel transport.
Okay, but that would it run off of electricity on board the aircraft?
That's right.
And it was 400 hertz, wasn't it?
Yeah, they had generators on there that would generate enough capacity,
Okay.
which probably required maybe 2 5-horsepower type units, high speed, lightweight.
We may see a use for them again on the ground. We're dealing with computer rooms that require 415 hertz
Yeah, that's right.
power, and if you generate that power, you can drive a small, high-speed, centrifugal compressor and get a whole lot of cooling in a small package.
I don't know how far he and Margaret Ingalls got on that project, but that was the last time I saw Mr. Carey. In fact, I got a picture of him out in his backyard, and also a picture that he of himself, a personal picture, he autographed for him at one time when I was up there.
All right. Now you went back and forth to sales meetings with Carrier, and you were still with Buford Brothers. How long did you stay with Buford Brothers?
I was there until 1937.
Just before the start of World War II.
Yeah, and that was when the Buford Brothers had acquired a new president, and he didn't want to be involved with anything that he wasn't thoroughly capable of knowing the working parts of it. And it hadn't got to be any big business at that time. So that's when Mr. Hearn, when I found out that that's what they wanted to do, that was when I approached Mr. Hearn, that told him he was going to dispose of it, but I'd like to have it, provided Carrier would approve the transfer, change.
So did you end up with the Carrier franchise in 1937?
Not in it, yeah. I was transferred from Buford Brothers over to M.T. Gossett.
M.T. Gossett.
Yeah. But they come down and looked at the situation, and we were in a little small building up on 16th Avenue at that time, but I'd already acquired some property on Church Street. And I took the general sales manager down there and showed him where we were going to build the building. And he said, that looks good. And so I'll go back and I'm going to recommend that they give you the franchise for the Nashville area. And it did, just in a few days it was confirmed. And we went to work, and then that was prior to World War II. We went working on acquiring property, didn't get the chance to build a building though until after World War II. We got it finished in 1946.
Okay, so this is the building, is this the building where the AAA is located?
No, they're next door in the old Tuck building.
Okay.
I'm over near 13th Avenue.
Okay. Toward the highway.
In fact, it's still the empty Gossett building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you had the carrier franchise then for how long?
Well, including the years with Carrier, which was more or less a partnership business with, with Difford Brothers, which was more or less a partnership business. While we distributed the Carrier for 25 years.
Is that right?
From 1933 until 1958.
58, okay. 58, and that was about the start of the ASHRAE chapter here in town, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
ASHRAE chapter began about that time.
Okay.
They merged, ASHRAE and NAPRE merged. I don't know whether you've got the history of that background or not. But the National Association of Power and Refrigerating Engineers merged with the American Society of Heating and Ventilation. That's what they were called on it, the original.
Okay.
So they merged it and called it ASHRAE.
Okay.
And I don't know what become of
Journal. I wish we had a copy of it too. We could work off of that.
There's probably copies of it in the library somewhere. But anyway, going back to the Carrier organization, at the time that they took over the GE plant, they needed they were looking for somebody to make president of Carrier and the chief executive officer to look after the business entities. And they employed Lemuel Boulware, who was either head of GE or one of their department heads.
And he was a businessman.
And he was a businessman and became the chief executive, CEO, I believe is what they call him today.
Okay.
And the interesting thing about that, Boulware had married a lady in Syracuse, New York. And this sort of gets down the picture where women sometimes influence industry. And Carrier was looking for a bigger plant where they could have more room to build equipment. And Mr. Boulware, going back and forth to Syracuse, I think he may have married a Syracuse lady from Syracuse. And he found out that the old Franklin automobile plant, which was in Syracuse, was available. And he got to negotiating with the city officials of Syracuse. And as I recall, the city of Syracuse deeded them that building and I think put up about $500,000 to refurbish it, to get Carrier to come to Syracuse with their main manufacturing plant.
That proved a very smooth move for Syracuse in that process.
And it proved a good move for Carrier because it got them away from Newark, which is down there in that highly industrial section, and got them where there would be more people available that even if they had to train. And it was a very prosperous move. And I've got the headlines now of that paper, the New York Times, I believe it was, give it a front page, or the Syracuse paper. One of them gave them a full front page on this thing, Carrier moving from Newark to Syracuse. I'll bring a copy of it along. I've got it.
Well, it's interesting because all my life I've always tied Carrier to Syracuse as.
That's right. In your time, it come along. But that was quite a But their old plant was right alongside the railroad at New Jersey. The old GE plant was there with a light bulb on it. And I think that's where Lemuel Boulevard entered the picture.
Well, GE also has a pretty good-sized facility up in Syracuse.
Yeah, that's right.
So he may have some Syracuse.
They built a
roots,
new
too.
plant up there about the same time Carrier moved in there, a little after. Then Carrier, after that, as they grew, were influenced to go out on near where GE was. In fact, they were just joint plants and build the Carrier plant out there.
Now, let me ask you something about a guy named Northrop, and I thought it was somebody named Ingalls. There were 3 engineers at Carrier assigned to develop an absolute filter. The 3 of them did develop this thing, and eventually became the Cambridge Corporation that's now located in Syracuse. Do you know any of that history at all?
Well, let's see. Yeah, I remember the people who developed it.
Okay,
Cambridge, but I don't just what phase of the industry they got into.
Well, it seems to me that they went up to Cambridge, Massachusetts to develop this thing.
Yeah.
Or at least that's where the name Cambridge came from.
Uh-huh.
And it seemed to me there was a guy named Ingalls in it that was from Kentucky, and that may be a faulty memory of mine. But if you don't know anything about it, then we will pursue something else. But that's vaguely the story of how Cambridge Filter got started.
I'm not sure if they started building a special type room air conditioner up there then or not. But some of the people from Carrier left and started building a unit similar to what GE builds now for hotel and motel type units.
Okay.
I don't know if that
Through the wall unit?
yeah, through the wall unit. I could research that a little bit and get it, but I'm not sure now just what the Cambridge Corporation got into.
Well, then we won't pursue that. Are there any other personalities you think you would like to, that you've experienced in your life that you'd like to talk about here?
Involving Carrier?
Any company,
Well-
really, that has become, the Carrier certainly wasn't the only key designer as this industry developed. There probably were key people in the air distribution side, maybe control people, contractors here in Nashville that were instrumental in the development of ideas and systems.
Well, another individual that entered into Carrier, which is mentioned in this book, was Cloud Wampler from Chicago. He was a banker in Chicago, investment banker, I believe is what. And he come over as president, and they let Lemuel Boulevard go. Not long after they moved into Syracuse. And Boulevard left there and went to work for a wallboard company. I forget which one it was.
U.S. Gypsum or something like that?
It not wasn't U.S. Gypsum. It was they took they made a insulated type wallboard. I don't call it out, but the headquarters I think was somewhere in the south.
You got out of Syracuse again, huh?
Oh yeah, he got out of Syracuse. As far as I know, I don't know whether he remained in Syracuse or not. But that was before they built the new plant. But of course, during World War II, Carrier was wrapped up in the tank business, filling the tanks. All the production line up there in that plant was formerly used for big equipment. Was turned into a production line for tanks, and then they set up another arrangement for building big centrifugals in another part of the plant. They built, I think they did all the steel work, the wraparound of the Chrysler tank. Chrysler built the mechanism for the
Treads
tanks.
and
And,
powertrain.
Yeah, the powertrain, and I think they put the cabin and the stuff up on, finished it up on a production line up there. Of course, they had several big manufacturers building tanks at that time, just like they did airplanes. Everybody they could get building airplanes.
Well, okay, let's sort of wrap up here a little bit. I think when we had the previous tape, you talked about I.C. Thomason getting started with the Supreme Court building as the plant engineer there, and then he was doing design work along with Don Nichols. And he essentially was the first mechanical consulting engineer here in town.
That's right. He became it. And of course, as he gradually went along, he brought in Andy Reid from Carrier in Atlanta, and Seckman, Tom Seckman. He come from Atlanta,
Okay,
out of Carrier.
out of Carrier.
And they went, and that increased his size of his operation to where he went out on 16th Avenue and acquired property and set up his engineering firm out there. And Seckman and Reed worked for him for 4 or 5 years. Then they went out and started their own business. And you know Seckman, Reed, and Smith now.
Smith, Seckman, Reed.
Smith, Seckman, and Reed. Well, they're offshoot from I.C. Thomas.
Well, I know Bill Jordan also worked there,
But,
and I think Wade Thomas worked there. Or was Thomas with Honeywell?
yeah.
Wade Thomas, did he ever work for I.C. Thomason?
Well, Thomas worked for us.
Wade Thomas?
I believe he did.
And you had Harold Cook working for you at one time.
And Harold Cook worked for us and ran a branch we had for small air conditioning. And then our construction superintendent went to work for I.C. Thomas, and they hired him away from
Who was that?
Dillingham.
Dillingham? Okay.
You know Dilly? They
Well,
had everybody called him Dilly.
yeah. Well, there's a bunch of Dillinghams around here.
Yeah, well, I had 3 of them working for me at one time. Those people come from down on Harpeth River, where I had a farm and lived down there, and come in and work, and they were fine mechanics. We had some welders that come in there that welded during World War II. They were welders in the bridge company building submarine chasers and barges, and they were marvelous welders. And as we grew and needed more and more people putting up pipelines and stuff like that, we got some of these boys from down there because they were all good mechanics and they were good workers.
Yeah.
And they could put up pipe, and you go out and look at the pipe work, and you can go out today and look at the pipe work that we did and the welds, and you can see the difference in a lot of the type of piping that's done. But we had some excellent welders, and most of them had got the experience in the bridge company during the World War II.
How big did your operation get here?
Well, we got it at one time. I guess we had around 50 or 60 welders and pipe fitters. You see, when World War II ended, there wasn't anybody else hardly any air conditioning business but N.T. Gossett Company. But then, when it ended, why, the people who were in the plumbing and heating business, like Gallagher and Busey Plumbing and A&H Mechanical, they had to get into incorporate the air conditioning business and these big jobs, you know. And And they were the type of people that were bidding on the big jobs, and we had a lot of competition pretty soon after World War II. But we continued to be probably the principal force in air conditioning on up until late 1950s. I tell you, when we actually got out of the air conditioning mechanical contracting business was about a year after they took a vote in our shop and we went union. And then you had to have union stewards on your job if you did that. And our production just wasn't, you couldn't hardly make any money on that. That sort of thing. And there's got so many people in it too, you had to almost make a mistake to get a job. But I'd say we got up to where we were doing $2.5–3 million a year of mechanical work.
Contracting work.
Yeah. But that was the thing I think that Carrier, one of the things that made Carrier decided to come here and open their own warehouse was the fact that they were trying to make a division between the contracting business and the wholesaling business.
And the distribution, yeah.
Because we had already made a trade with Carrier out of Atlanta to open up a distribution business and separate it from the contracting business. And had rented office warehouse space in Chattanooga, and we were going to split off the wholesale business entirely. And then for some reason, Carrier decided that there's enough volume that they'd come in and open up their own warehouse.
And is this where Ted Moats came into the picture here?
Now, Ted had been with us for years.
Well, he was with you.
Yeah, he started out with us before World War II when he got out of high school.
Okay.
Around in about 1938 or 39. And when World War II broke out, then of course he was drafted or volunteered now, and I'm not sure which. But then when he come back, well, he come back into the company, and that's when we'd all moved over on Church Street and enlarged the company and set the contracting business up on the lower level down on 12th Avenue and separated entirely at that time from the contracting business, and they had a wholesale department up on Church Street level. But I could see Carrier's view. In fact, I think there was some legislation passed in Washington separated wholesalers from being tied in with the contracting business. You had to divide it.
You had to split it apart.
And that was when we went to work and started making arrangements to separate it.
Okay.
I was very fond of all the old Carrier crowd, but after Mr. Carrier died and the other old timers were replaced by somebody else, it was a different ball game. There wasn't that close association with the people who really helped start Carrier. And actually, the people like our company was the people that helped build Carrier.
Sure. The field sales force is often the lifeblood of these firms, and they don't control them, they don't own them, and
That's
they
right.
very often don't know how to deal with them.
Well, if you find out in big industry, you don't know which way they're liable to move.
Yeah.
And you can't bank your whole life on big industry if you're distributing. Anyway, the first orders out there we gave Carrier of Buford Brothers was around $1,200. That was all they had to sell at that time. We bought a compressor and some small, little big old room units they had. And at the end of World War II, we were actually buying less than $100,000 a year from Carrier. And by 1954 and 55, we were buying around $1 million a year from them. because the thing had begun to expand and move pretty fast at that time. Of course, now, I don't know, between Chattanooga and Knoxville and Nashville all piled together, well, that's a tremendous volume of business. Another thing Carrier started doing, they started dictating to you how much you could mark up that equipment. They controlled the mark. They wanted you to take a very small markup and get a big volume, get volume of business. So we're in big industry. When you get the fool of it, they're going to call the shot.
Well, I can read between the lines of the sentiment about that.
Yeah.
I share that sentiment. Okay, what else should we talk about? And then we'll close it up. Do we have anything else we should put on this tape today?
Well, I don't know what is any more jobs of interest, anything like that you.
Well, which one are you? What is your proudest job? Which is the one you're proudest of?
Well, I tell you, we take a great deal of interest in all of them, but I'd say National Life, we did the first broadcast studio, A and B, for National Life in about 1934 or 5. And that was the first time we got into the television business,
Radio?
the radio and television. Then when they built Studio C, it was very much enlarged, and
Where were these physically located?
we were physically located up on 16th Avenue until 1946.
No, where was Studio A and B?
Oh, they were in the old National Life building that they tore down when they built after they built the new building, right there on the corner of 7th Church.
Yeah.
Studio A and B was there, and then they built a new building right behind there, a new office building. And when they got up to the top floor, they added Studio C on the top floor. And that's where we really got into the necessity of quietness and design of ductwork and so on. And then we did Studio C for them, and that was the first real television showplace that we had to deal with. You had to have quietness. And, by that time, Jack DeWitt had come on. He was president of
National Life.
he was president of the broadcasting division. And Jack, I had met when I was working in the Nash Machine Company. He and George Reynolds were the two developers of radio in Nashville. And when I was in the Nash Machine Company, George and Reynolds and Jack DeWitt come down there and said they were fixing to build a radio station. And the druggist up at 18th and Broadway was backing them. I think it was called WLW or something like that. Anyway, they were developing this radio station out there and said, we've got some condensers out there that need to be cooled, and we know how much heat is being thrown off, and we need somebody to design us a pump to take care of that. So I said, okay, and they gave me all the information, and then I designed them a pump to take care of the equipment in the broadcast room, tower, and the room out there that had to do with the radio. And I met Jack then, and as he went on and progressed with the broadcasting business, he got me in to doing the air conditioning, even up to the Studio C, and then when they went to Nob Hill, I put in all that plant out there for them. So that sort of shows how being capable of doing a satisfactory job follows you on through the business.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. That hasn't changed.
So,
That hasn't changed, and it's still as much art as it is a science in my mind. There's still frontiers of learning in our craft.
another very interesting association that I had with the refrigeration and air conditioning business was the Dinkler Hotel chain. And I don't know whether you're even familiar with the Dinkler Hotel chain or not.
You told me that they did, wasn't that the Hermitage Hotel?
No, that was at Andrew Jackson,
Andrew Jackson, okay.
Dinkler. Carlin Dinkler's father started the Dinkler Hotel chain at Macon, Georgia. And then he bought the Ansley in Atlanta and the Piedmont. And then they acquired the Andrew Jackson. The Andrew Jackson was just finished when I came to Nashville from Memphis. And I met their engineer, Carlin Dinkler, senior. Carlin Dinkler, I believe he was, his father wasn't, he was just Carlin Dinkler. I think but then Carlin Jr. was his son. Anyway, Carlin Dinkler had an engineer and a designer named Giannone. They were Italian descent, and they were cousins. And he had come to Nashville very frequently. And Jim White, who went with I.C. Thomason as their power engineer, violin, was a graduate of Georgia Tech, and he come up here as engineer for the Andrew Jackson. And I met Jim and did a lot of work for him there in the hotel. And also did a lot of work for J.B. Pound in Memphis, in Chattanooga, who owned the Patton Hotel. And they decided to build the Lookout Mountain Hotel in Chattanooga in 1929. And Mr. Pound told me, he said, you're going to have a certain amount of refrigeration up there. You know where it was, out on the mountain up there?
Is it burned?
No, it didn't burn. It was a rest home of some kind up there now. Anyway, this is an interesting story if you want it.
Yeah, and I want to hear your interest.
And so as they were finishing the hotel up, they still hadn't negotiated the operator lease. And finally, they negotiated a lease with the Dinkler chain, which then consisted of the Tutwiler in Birmingham and Jefferson Davis in Montgomery and Ansley in Atlanta and the Piedmont. And I believe the Andrew Jackson. And I don't know if they'd gotten the Savannah Hotel yet or not, but anyway, they had a pretty good hotel chain. They started their hotel chain about the time Hilton started his. Anyway, they went up there and looked at the hotel and the amount of equipment was going in it, and they told Mr. Brown, said, you're not going to have enough refrigeration equipment. And we were putting in an ice making tank and all the refrigeration equipment in the kitchen for the meat refrigerator boxes and so on. Wasn't any air conditioning. So we said, we're going to have to enlarge the size of that equipment. So they called me, Mr. Pound, and said, you be over in Chattanooga, whatever the date was, but the Dinkler people are going to be here, and they want to increase that equipment up to the size of it. So I went over and met Mr. Dinkler and a group of people who was their chief steward, and his name was, what the heck is his name, anyway, and Giannone, who was the engineer. And they wound up with saying, well, we just got to have twice as much ice making capacity. I think we was making about 3,000 or 4,000 pounds a day of every 24 hours. And maybe less than that, probably a ton a day, maybe 2,000 pounds. They wanted to make about 4,000 pounds ice. Well, they used a lot of ice running. And when we got through with it, why, they were going to double the size of the kitchen equipment, larger refrigerators and so on. So when we got back downtown that evening late and we got figuring on things, well, they just said, well, you just go ahead and increase the capacity of the refrigeration equipment. It's double the size of it. And that was Frick equipment we were handling at Nash Machine Company. so I did that, doubled the size of it, and got it going, and was there for the opening. And after that, for years, I began to do all the Winkler change refrigeration and air conditioning work. When the air conditioning come in, why, I did the first 100 rooms for them in the St. Charles Hotel in New Orleans, because they'd acquired the St. Charles. And I did the first 100 rooms for them down there.
So you were doing work out of town?
Yeah.
Pretty good ways out of town.
Yeah. And
How would you handle that?
well, I did it all, looked at it all personally myself. And they furnished, Mr. Giannone, who was their superintendent and design engineer, they would furnish all the help and do the construction work themselves.
Okay, so you
Have
just,
it done by local steam fitters or
okay,
whatnot.
but you go down and superintendent the job.
I would just design it and sell them the equipment and look after it for them until they got it installed. And then I did most of all their boiler work, putting in new boilers in the engine rooms in some of the old hotels. And that was one of the most interesting. My friendship with Mr. Dinkler and that crew got us a lot of business, and we did a lot of air conditioning.
Sounds like you did some very interesting work.
Yeah, so I did. Then when the Admiral Jackson Hotel was air conditioned, it was handled by Newcomb and Boyd out of Atlanta, engineers, and we did that job for them, doing the rooms. But before air conditioning, back in the early days, before any much air conditioning going on, one of the most interesting things, they called me to Atlanta, come down there and talk to them about some equipment. And I went down, and when we got there, Mr. Dinkler said they needed to buy ceiling fans for all the hotels. Yeah. You know, the time they had the ceiling fans with the lights under them? Right. And they had the Hunter Fan Company man there that day, because he wanted to use Hunter fans if he could. And so we sat down and figured out how many fans they needed for I think it's 7 hotels. And when I left there that evening, I had an order for 1,400 ceiling fans. That was before air conditioning.
That was a good size order right then, for sure. Yeah.
So when liquor come in, why, Mr. Dinkler called me and said, I want you and Mr. Giannone to go to New York and visit around the bars up there and see what type of equipment they've got and design a tap room and a bar for the St. Charles.
And M.T. Gossett. This is the 5th of September, and the purpose of this tape is to record a little of the early history of refrigeration and air conditioning sciences as it started in Nashville, Tennessee. And I guess what we ought to do is start out by saying, who is M.T. Gossett and how did he get in the air conditioning business?
Well, now, how far back do you want to go on this thing?
Well, when Mark Young was in here, he talked to me about you working for Nashville Machine as a project engineer, and evidently that was very much in the early stages of the development of refrigeration here in Nashville.
Well, my experience with refrigeration started when I was about 12 years old. Now, I was born out in Dixon, Tennessee, 40 miles west of here. And in the summertime, my way of making money, aside from handling the Nashville Bound every day and delivering it, was working for a gentleman who run an ice wagon in the morning, and in the evening I would go down to the plant and help the engineer operate the steam driven compressors and oil and wood in it, had wood boilers then in those days. And bring in wood and buy the boiler and just a helper around the engine room. And I learned to operate and how to make ice and stuff like that. really when I was rather young.
All right, so when you were 12, let's date you now. When you were 12, about what year is that?
In 1950.
1950. Okay. So
And the first time I got involved in construction business, my brother worked for Memphis Engineering Company in Memphis, Tennessee. And he had an ice plant to install at Louisville, Mississippi. And I went over there and stayed and helped him install that plant. And when they got through, they didn't have anybody to run it. And I was about 16 years old then. And they wanted me to stay there the rest of the summer. And I stayed there a couple of months and operated the plant and trained somebody else to run it. Then I went back into Memphis. That's where I started.
Okay. Let's talk about those early ice plants. What did it involve to run them? You mentioned a wood-fired boiler.
Well, yeah, in the early stages, by Triumph Machine Company, built a steam-driven ammonia compressor. And you had the steam engine on one side and a compressor on the other side. And the steam engine operated the ammonia compressor. And then they had a storage tank, what's called brine tank, and they were filled with cans, about 12 by 20, 11 by 22, about 4 feet high, and you freeze a block of ice in those cans. And then had a horse, and you pull it out and put it on a dump, and dump it in the storage room.
Would the ice come out easily, or did you have to put
They
steam
had
on
a
the
sprinkler
outside?
on it. They had a dump where you could hold 2 cans, and you'd set these cans down and turn them over, and the water would come on and sprinkle the can, and then as soon as it loosened up, it'd run down the ramp and go in storage.
I see.
And then they'd go in there and stack it up.
So it was a bulk
It's made
commodity.
in 300-pound blocks, is what it's made in.
Now, Mark Young, when he was here, he talked about the difficulty of moving 300-pound blocks, but you learned an art to that, and if you did it the right way, you could move them pretty readily, one man.
And now, after I left that plant in Mississippi, I went over in Arkansas to Harvard, Arkansas, which is about 20 miles out of Memphis. And there was a 200-ton ice plant called Railways Ice Company. And they manufactured ice to ice the Frisco Railroad fruit cars coming up from Florida. And I worked in that plant as an assistant to the night engineer. And in the daytime, they had trains coming through. Well, we'd pull enough ice, chain conveyor up on top of the deck, in which we would break that ice up into 100-pound blocks, and we'd ice the whole train in maybe a couple of hours. And they'd always call out from Memphis when the train left Memphis and tell us to be there in 15, 20 minutes. We'd start getting ice up on the top of that deck, and then we'd slide it down in the bunkers in the end of the fruit car.
How many pounds of ice would it take to do a train?
Well, it'd take about,
Or how many blocks of these?
that's what I mean, it would take about 15 blocks, 20 blocks for each car, and they would be train in those days would have 50 or 60 cars in it.
Holy mackerel. That's a bunch of ice.
And we'd have a bunch of helpers up there breaking up ice and shoving in those cars. The train there had to take over a couple of hours. That's the way the ice goes bunkers.
And they put the ice in bunkers in fruit storage
In
cars.
each end.
In each end.
Yeah.
And that's what a refrigerated car was.
Gravity circulation. You know, bananas, oranges, and all kinds of fruit. That's the way they transport. And Pullman cars, when they first started cooling Pullman cars, they had ice tanks in under the train with a fan on it, and they'd circulate the air over those ice blocks in Pullman cars and cool them when they first started cooling Pullman cars.
Was it effective? Was it pretty effective?
Yeah, it's very effective.
I'm trying to think, how long would the ice last once you loaded it in?
Well, it'd probably last overnight till, if they were going to Chicago, and that's where most of them went, or Kansas City and St. Louis, till they get to the next icing station. If they was going beyond Chicago, that icing, they would take them in Chicago over to Kansas City.
Was it mainly fruit, or was there any meat? And
No, mainly
any-
fruit, mainly fruit.
Mainly fruit.
And stuff that had to be incorporated.
The early refrigeration then was all ammonia compressors.
They had a huge compressor. I know when this railway's ice cream, there was a manufacturer built it with Carlos steam engine. And the flywheel on it compressor was taller than this room. Great big heavy flywheel, and it didn't run over about 150 RPM.
It's a big engine.
Yeah.
This room is about 15 feet high, or 15, 12, 12.
That's right,
12.
those damn flywheels.
Yeah.
And you had to oil that into those compressors about every hour. You'd go around and check the lubricators, jet lubricators, and keep them full of oil.
So you had a pretty good introduction to refrigeration long before comfort cooling came
That's
along.
right, that's right.
All right, say in your own way how you saw this evolving and how you progressed through this with the art.
And my father died when I was 17. I'd worked as a helper then. He was a carpenter contractor, and I helped him do carpenter work too, and things like that. I became a pretty good mechanic. When he died, while my brother was working for Who's the Ice Machine Works in Evansville, Indiana. And I went up there and went to work for them, helping install ice plants and cold storage rooms and freezers for manufacturing ice cream and stuff like that. And when I was 19 years old, I believe they shipped a 10-ton ice plant out to Brazil, Indiana. They had the haul bring it on a train and shipped me a toolbox and a roll of plans. And a further come by and looked the job over and he said, well, there's your toolbox and your plans and the equipment, all in the freight car, flat cars.
Yeah.
And I stayed there and unloaded everything, put the plant together and started running. That was the first plant I built by myself.
And you physically built the whole thing by yourself?
Yeah, I had blueprints and plans to work. And we did a lot of refrigeration work, building ice plants and everything other in Indiana.
All right, did they give you all the components, or did you have to cut and fit pipe to
We had-
pipe the thing together and all that?
Yeah, we had to cut and thread extra heavy pipe, do it all by hand. We had some helpers. You mainly let them, you do the measuring and they do the cutting and threading and put the pipe up so the way it worked out.
And it worked.
Yeah,
How long did it take you to do that?
that took me about a month to finish that thing. It was all driven by diesel engines. So you had to install diesel engines to operate the compressors and have a line shaft and everything else to run off the belts.
So now we got diesel fuel driving a compressor.
That's right.
But there were compressor manufacturers that were, dealing with refrigerants at this stage.
Yeah, I'd say that Delaware and developed in France, one of the first ammonia compressors. Brick company back in around 1865, they were in the steam engine business and sawmill business, and they developed an ammonia compressor. And they got in the ice making plant and both those
1865.
well, back after the Civil War, I believe 1868 is when they got their first ammonia compressor. And the two brothers that worked for Frick Company, in the engineering machine shop, they went over to York, Pennsylvania, and got the Gladfelder paper industry to back them into making compressors, and they started Yorktown. That's where Yorktown.
What, do you know, remember the names of those two brothers?
I knew them both. I met them both at NAP. I used to belong to NAPRE in Memphis when I finally went down to Memphis. And I met them both in Louisville at the National NAPRE meeting.
What is that?
That is back in about 1927, and they were two brothers that started
Yorktown.
And they were chief speakers at that meeting. And that's the way Yorktown got started. These two brothers worked with this.
And they,
I tried to recall their names, but I don't for the minute anyway.
Did they manufacture ammonia compressors also?
Yeah, they started making ammonia compressors, similar to quickly. Wasn't much different, one whole lot different. They become, I guess, one of the largest manufacturers in America on ammonia compressors. York and Quick, and built her out of Milwaukee. Built people were Germans, and they come over from Germany and started to build a company in Milwaukee.
So these are three manufacturers or sources of compressors here in this
three
country.
very early ones. And Triumph was one, and there was another very interesting old compressor design that was here in Nashville when I come up here from Memphis. It was called a Hercules, and it was a walking beam type. It had a steam engine on one side and a rocker arm on the other side to push two pistons up and down. And Hercules developed that old type of compressor. And this was an ice plant down Meadows Bone Holland down here right over the Mumford Street.
Say that
when
one
I
again.
come to that.
Meadows,
Bone and Holland.
Meadows, Vaughn, and Howard. Okay. And that was an ice plant
They
down
was
there?
in the ice manufacturing business in Colville. Most nearly all the ice companies were also in the coal business because of being a year-round business.
Okay. And also, did they use coal to fuel their
A lot of them.
boiler to
back
run
in
the
those
ice
days.
plant? Yeah.
Atlantic Ice Company here was formerly Atlantic Ice and Fuel, and they had coal in the winter. Their original compressors were steam driven. We had to change those out while I was in management machine company. When they got big power plants, they were able to get away from the steam boilers, or they either put in their own power generator to use electric motors.
Okay, so they generate their own electricity on site.
Yeah.
A lot.
Well,
All right, so in the prior to 1930s, refrigeration arts were primarily associated with ice plants, the manufacture of ice.
ice and cold storage. Cold
Cold
storage.
storage.
Yeah.
Okay. How did they do cold storage then? In ammonia?
They used ammonia. I got involved in, after Indiana, I come back to Memphis. And I went to work for the United Iron Works, who built stirring ammonia compressors at Springfield, Missouri. And as I recall, in 1925 and 26, we installed around 30 small block ice making plants in Mississippi and Arkansas and West Tennessee. After that time, I got to where I started selling and installing. And,
Who were you selling these small ice plants to?
primarily to individuals in small towns.
A milk distributor or somebody like that?
Now, I tell you, the first work I did right out in Mississippi was a banker in Batesville, Mississippi. He owned an ice plant there, and he wanted me to come over and overhaul it and get it straightened out for him. And that was around 1920. And I did that, and then he bought a whole new plant from Sterling ice machine people. And I stayed down, we over and installed it for him, and I stayed down and run it that summer. He had another plant at Charleston, he was kind of old and turned that plant out for me. And United Iron Works needed construction engineers, and so the man who was running the Memphis office told me that I wanted to go with United Iron Works. I'd go work for them. So they were shipping 20-ton ice plant over to Delmar, Arkansas, toolbox and everything. I went over and installed the plant for them. And if I got through that, when I come over to Henderson, Tennessee, and installed one there. And that winter I went to Torrance, Mississippi, and rebuilt and added on to their plant. And,
How big physically was a 10-ton ice plant?
well,
What are we talking about?
it takes 12 300-pound cans, 12 to 14 cans, to produce a ton of ice. And so if you wanted say a 10-ton plant, you'd take 120 can tank. But you pull those cans every 24 hours, you pull half of it. It takes 48 hours to freeze a 300-pound block of ice. So you pull half the tank in 124 hours. You pull it every hour and add back tanks of water consistently. And it takes that many cans to produce a ton, and just make the tank as big as you want it to. And you had agitators on each end to circulate the brine around through the tank. And in those days, you used straight pour in between each row of cans. And,
Well, that's with ammonia runs.
yeah, the ammonia went back and forth through those coils.
And this was just a piece of copper pipe back and forth, back and forth.
And you had to make a brine that would you'd go down to as low as 0. But you normally carried your brine tank temperature around 14 degrees. And circle it in. That way you can make a block ice out of the shot in 48 hours, in 24 hours, and the next one, and so on.
I'm envisioning a big vat with these cans sitting down, were there catwalks above it? Or were you...
It was an oak floor with lids on it. And
okay.
So
you dropped a can into the hole in
you
the
dropped
floor.
with an electric hoist to find it. They had old crank hoists in the early days, they cranked it up. But they put an electric hoist later on. And you used to dump the can out, and then the fellow was right up over where, and when you let the dump back up, well, there's two pipes, two pipes valve, there's two cans there, or you'd have a lever there you pull, and its cans would float in it, that measure out exactly the right amount of water. And you just pull this lever and then dump all that water in those cans in just a few minutes.
Oh, so you let the water run and fill a can waiting,
Yeah.
and then when it's time to fill a can, you fill, boom, right away you fill it.
Then with the hoist, you carried the cans back and put them down in the old way to take them out. You had
Never seen this operation.
Yeah.
Never seen
That
it.
old block up. And what you normally did, you'd pull every other row. You'd pull a row and skip over. Thanks.
All right, bring us into the use of refrigeration for comfort cooling. I guess that was a departure from just the
Well,
industrial refrigeration.
with each ice plant, you had a great big storage room that you had to maintain a temperature below freezing to keep the ice from melting. And you did that with pipe coils around the wall, primarily, the way that was done.
So you just ran the refrigerant, the ammonia, through.
Through all those pipes and hold the room temperature.
What were the refrigerant metering devices? Were you using expansion
You use
valves?
a needle valve,
Needle
little,
valve?
little needle valve, and you'd set those needle valves so you maintain around 25 pounds ammonia pressure. That gives you about a zero temperature on the ammonia going through the car.
So it was a thermostatically controlled valve.
They didn't have any automatic float controls in those days. Now, a little later on was it developed the float control and an accumulator which you hooked your coils to, and you carry about a half a accumulator full of ammonia, and that was enough to keep all your coils saturated.
I see.
And that was a great improvement. But otherwise, you had to watch those expansion valves all the time because you didn't run ammonia back on your compressor. But then, that's where the big ice plants was also commercial cold storage plants tied in with it. And they made ice in big commercial storage.
So an investor, a businessman, would invest in a boiler or a diesel engine of some type and a compressor, and from that build.
Coils and tanks, and one manufacturer produced all of it, the equipment, and shipped it in by on cars in those days.
Okay, so he had a whole set of things, a whole
Yeah.
kit that was put in. And Bilter, Frick, and York were some of the early compressor people.
They did that kind of work. They were the early, and these, Henry Bolt built absorption plants, and they did that with steam transfer of ammonia from and circulated through the plant. Henry Bolt loved.
All right, well, now, I don't really know what question to ask now, but I think let's go from ice plants to what you see as the next step of the evolution of refrigeration in your life.
Well, it went into cold storages for meats and vegetables and so on. Now, a lot of things we did in the early days, the old meat markets had a big refrigerator made a 10 by 12 or great big refrigerator. And they were buying ice and pulling it up and shoving it in those bunkers overhead to keep their meat boxes full. Then we started putting brine tanks in the top of those boxes and coils on them and a small compressor. And when the butcher come in every morning, we turned that compressor along, and they didn't run all day. They'd chill that brine out in the bunker up there and form ice on the side. And when you leave it, now you pull the switch and it's get cold overnight. That was before they developed automatic control.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So it would have to
He
get-
couldn't leave running all night. You know, go on.
So if you were a butcher and you were sick at home, you better get up and go turn the compressor on.
That's the
before
first thing you do. You turn the compressor on when you go in the morning in the meat market or wholesale. Now the wholesale fruit and vegetables got started in the cold storage of vegetables and fruits. That was one of the early developments of refrigeration, following ice making and along with the ice making system.
All right, so for cold storage, I see a room that's a big box, and you've got ammonia coils around the perimeter or some way in holding this box.
That's right. They were heat rooms. Some of them would have to hold 3 or 4 carloads of bananas or vegetables of one kind or another, apples and oranges. And they were insulated with 4 inches of insulation, corkboard in those days. And they had to maintain temperatures around. Well, bananas would be about 50 degrees. And then if you wanted to ripen them, they had the method of applying heat to them and ripen them when they got ready to bring them on, put them
on the shelf.
Put them on the market. And that was just a process of air conditioning, keeping those coolers and boxes and cold storage rooms at a certain temperature. And the evolution of air conditioning is simply maintaining a higher temperature in an enclosed space.
How did that get started? Where was Willis Carrier while all this ice making was going on? Was he on the scene at all at this time?
Yeah, he was, Mr. Carrier, I think he graduated from Cornell University in the early 1900s. And he went to work for Buffalo Ford, who was an old fan manufacturer. And those fans were being used for cooling, but they couldn't get the temperatures they wanted really for comfort. And I think his first development was the development of a centrifugal machine. Compressor, yeah. And that way, and I think DuPont developed F11, which is a refrigerant that could work in that type of machine. And actually, a centrifugal machine is a steam turbine in reverse, actually is what it is.
All right, okay. So
He
there was some precedent for the concept of a centrifugal compressor.
I think there was a printing plant in Buffalo that was having problems with maintaining the correct humidity by doing certain types of printing. And that's one of the first jobs that he developed and installed while he was working at Buffalo Ford. Something about that. And J.R. Lyle, who was a graduate from the University of Kentucky, he got interested in this type of thing. And he and Mr. Carrier and Ned Murphy out of Chicago, and a gentleman named Stacy decided they would set up the Carrier contracting company. In the early days, other than building a compressor, why Carrier was pretty much like a mechanical contractor today. They went out on the open market and bought everything else to make up the.
They put it together.
And they put it together.
Okay. So he was very much like M.T. Gossett up there. M.T. Gossett's down here building ice plants.
That's right. They had to go out and buy the components and put the plant together. I read quite a bit. I belonged to an association called NAPRE when I was in Memphis.
What does that stand for?
National Association of Power and Refrigerating Engineers.
I see. Okay.
And after I come to Nashville, shortly thereafter, the other association was ASHRAE, I believe, American Society of Heating and Refrigerating Engineers. And they combined with
Call them ASHRAE.
and called them ASHRAE. And that's how I got into ASHRAE in the early days. But if you're interested in now what brought me into Nashville,
Yeah, let's hear how you got to Nashville. Now, we left you
why I
there.
come to Nashville.
You were off in Memphis, right?
I was in Memphis.
All right.
I'd been working there several years for United Iron Works, who owned the Sterling Ice Machine plant in Springfield, Missouri. And the United Iron Works were big builders of oil field tanks. And since tanks were involved with the ice plant business, and they were developing compressors for the oil field work. So that's what I think got them into the ice making plant business. And they ended in the big compressors. But they went both just about in the middle 20s. And I come to Nashville during the flood in the spring of 1927.
What do you mean during the flood?
They had a flood here in Nashville in 1927 that backed water out in all these low places. And there was a poultry plant over there called Spillers.
Nave Spillers?
Spillers, yeah. And I was still working for United Iron Works. And they wrote in a quotation on ammonia compressor, because some of that they're going to have to put in some more ammonia compressor and do some enlargement over there. And I haven't been born out of here 40 miles from Nashville. That gave me my first opportunity to come back into my old home country. So I came up there and went out to Native Spillers and quoted on them on the largest ammonia compressor that United Iron Works built. At that time it took about 75, 100 horsepower more. And I was staying at the Hermitage Hotel. And I come down in the lobby one morning. I was getting ready to leave town after I put a bid in out there. And I run into a friend from Memphis who was the Memphis agent for Frick Company. And
He was bidding on the same
and
job?
he said, "What are you doing up there?" And I said, I'm doing the same thing you are, I guess. He says, "Yeah, I've been bidding on a job out in Native Spillers." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I have too." But he says, "I got something else I want to talk to you about." So I'm just about to sign up National Machine Company as a distributor for Frick Company. And they're looking for somebody to head up their refrigeration department.
Why Nashville Machine? Why would he sign up Nashville
Because
Machine?
it's tied into the machinery business, and they were machinists and installing steam engines and elevators and stuff like that, and they were interested because their main competitor, John Bouchard and Sons, was a York distributor, and they wanted to get into refrigeration business, so there wasn't one company here, and that was John Bouchard, who was selling York equipment.
All right, now John Bouchard was selling York. Was he making ice plants using York machines?
I don't think they were doing that, by that time they wasn't doing a lot of ice plant, small ice plant. Anyway, he said, "Well, how long are you going to be out?" So I was fixing to pack up and leave. He said, "Well, you wait here until I can." It was in the mornings. I'm going to have lunch with Mr. Keelan, who was the principal owner of his family.
All right, this is Nashville Machine?
Yeah.
And his name was Keelan?
Yeah.
K-E...
Tom Keelan, K-E-E-L-I-N-G.
K-E-E-L-I-N-G.
Yeah.
Okay, Tom Keelan.
And it said, I think he'd like to talk to you. So I said, "Well, I'll be there around the hotel and wait and see what happens." So he called me back and made a point for me to meet Mr. Keelan and come up to the hotel and talk to him at 2:30. So I stayed over and he came up and told me what he wanted and made me an offer which was substantially more than what I was making in Memphis. And I knew the United Iron Works was about to close up. So
That wasn't a hard decision.
I hated to leave because the man that I worked with over there and worked under in Memphis was one hell of a fine guy, and I hated to leave him. But I went back. I said, "No, I'll go back and talk to my associate, my boss, who really, and talk to him." And he said, "Well," he said, "I'll hold the deal open for you, and we'd like to come to do it." And I went back and told Jack, I called him, his name was T.L. Jackson, what I'd been offered. And he said, "Well, you know the situation with United Iron Works. I may not have a job 2 months from now." And I said, "If you want to take it, go ahead and do it." So I called Mr. Keelan and told him I believe I accept his offer. And writing a letter for at least a 3-year contract. So that get things started. So he wrote me a letter and set up pull it, and above the puller, then I got a commission above that. And so that's how and I come from Nashville in 1927. That's
1927.
when I come to Nashville Sheep Company.
Okay. Do you recall your quota at all?
Well, I made more than my quota the first year, and I had a 3-year contract to run on. By the end of the third year, and they renewed my contract. That got us into 1930. Of course, the depression was coming on, but I got another contract for another 3 years. And,
Was that common in those days, a contract or a letter?
well, a letter of agreement, of some sort,
A
yeah.
letter of agreement,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it was very, particularly when you're doing more than just day labor or something like that, working.
You beat your quota the first year, making money, doing pretty well?
Yeah, I had that in the quota and travel expense.
So you weren't 30 years old at this time, were you?
I was 24 years old.
That's a pretty good position for a 24-year-old young
I
fellow.
took over the department and set it up. He didn't have a refrigeration department. Then I opened a branch office in Chattanooga. One of my brother that I had worked for several years before, my brother come down and went to Chattanooga to take the Chattanooga office. And I opened another office in Knoxville with a fellow named Johnson up there. And that's where National Sheep Company got into the refrigeration contracting business.
And they had offices in Knoxville, Chattanooga, and Memphis.
Main office, no, a main office here, no, they
Main office here.
didn't operate on that.
Okay.
There was another supply company in Memphis, Reed and Decker. Handled quick company over there.
Okay, so the first line that you dealt with really was Frick compressors, and that was ice plants
Yeah, ice plants and cold storage
and
plants.
cold storage plants. So that's
Back in those, well, by that time, we'd begun to do an awful lot of small cold storage plants for produce houses and meat packing. small
local
meat
grocery type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm concerned that your hand will make the
okay.
record a little bit hard to hear. Some poor gal's going to have to try to translate this and put it on paper. And by the way, we will bring that to you, let you review that and approve it before.
What you do that is double space it and leave room to make corrections.
Yes, she does. Yeah, you'll see how they do that. That's very nice. Okay, who are the early players at Nashville Machine? You set up the refrigeration department. Who are the early players in that? People that you respect.
You mean our customers?
Well, no, I was thinking in terms of who are the people in Nashville Machine that were good, strong people, people with manufacturers that you respected, that you got a lot of help from. I imagine you leaned pretty heavily on the manufacturers.
Well, yeah, they were agents at that time for Skinner Uniflow steam engines, and they were doing elevators, and they were also in the mill supply business, and all types of mill supply. And Lincoln Motors, I remember they were distributors for Lincoln Motors.
Okay,
So they had to have motors, and they had to have valves and fittings and stuff. Quick Company made all the heavy ammonia valves. They had to be special heavy valves to handle ammonia.
Okay. So National Machine was very much involved in machinery of different sorts.
Yeah,
And this was this Tom Keeling.
yeah.
that
They had the
lead-
electric department, which Mark Young run.
Oh, that's where Mark Young
rewinding,
came.
yeah, he was running, looked after rewinding motors and electric work.
Okay.
And they had an elevator department who sold elevators. So then this set them up in a refrigeration division.
All right. Okay, so that's how that started. I've often wondered how.
Well, that's how they got into that type of
Okay. Did Mr. Keeling own Nashville Machine at this time? Was it a proprietorship?
His, no, he married the daughter of some family that had some money that owned the principal interest.
I see.
And I don't remember for a minute who the lady was. She owned some buildings up on Church Street. I don't know if it was those buildings. And they handled pipe and fittings and mill supplies, and also in the steam contracting business, the steam boilers and things like that.
Radiators and that sort of
Yeah,
stuff. Okay. So they're very much involved in the contracting business as it involved machinery and pipe and electricity.
Yeah,
That's quite a comprehensive firm, really.
that's what they were. And they're competitive with John Bouchard firm. I don't know if you ever met John Bouchard.
I never
Not
met
young
him.
John. They just John the Third is now running that company.
Tell me a little bit about John Bouchard at this time, as it relates to Nashville Machine. I mean, were they all in the same sort of business, or was
They were in the same sort of business, and his father, John Bouchard's father, came down from Canada, and he had two sons. And he started John Bouchard and Son. And they were in the foundry business, primarily. They started off in the foundry business. Then they got in the mill supply and industrial supply business, pipe, similar. And they and Nash Machine Company were two of the only people in Nashville at that time. They were pretty strong competitors. Then there was John Bouchard was main one after his father died. He took over the business and John Jr. come along.
that's who runs it now?
No, that's John Jr. come along, and his father died, and he took over the operation. Of course, he had a lot of people in there in the meantime that were capable of running the different departments. I think John Jr. graduated from Vanderbilt Engineering, I believe. And John and I became good friends with John Jr. Then he died about the 70s, and John the Third had come in and took over. So he was over now.
That might be another interesting interview sometime.
It might be, yeah.
Okay, so here we are. We're over at Nashville Machine, and we're starting our refrigeration department. You mentioned a job that preceded the B&W cafeteria. That was a very interesting job in your eye.
Yeah, well, I didn't do the B&W cafeteria while I was in National Machine. That was done after I got involved with the Carrier Corporation. But what I was doing at National Machine Company tied me in with some people that later became tied in with Carrier, and that sort of paved the way for me to get into the Carrier air conditioning business.
I see. All right, lead us into that a little bit. Tell us how that evolved.
Well, I stayed there until the National Machine Company, so it was about 1933. But we were doing a lot of heating and cooling business. And in the heating industry, there was a York Heating and Ventilating Company in York, Pennsylvania. And they built air hammers with steam coils. And we bought quite a few of those and put in large industrial plants and for heating, which was the beginning of fan handling units for heat instead of just radiators.
Okay.
And the southern representative for York Heating and Ventilating was in Atlanta, and we did business with him. But one of the principal owners of York Heating and Ventilating was a Nashville man named Paul Gant.
Paul Gant.
Yeah, and he had two sisters here who were school teachers. and had a brother in the lumber business out at Nolensville. And Paul Gant came to Nashville to see his sisters, and I met him because we were buying from them York Heating and Ventilating these large fan-type units for heat. And that's how I got acquainted with him. And as time progressed, he did more and more of that work, and I realized that Carrier was the principal that time in the air conditioning.
Well, wait a minute, I thought Gant was with York.
He was with York, but here's what happened. Carrier, as you remember, they did not have all the components for completing an air conditioning system. So, when they formed, the original formation was Carrier, Brunswick Crochelle. Crochelle was builders of ammonia compressor, and they merged with Carrier. Then they merged York Heating and Ventilating, merged with Carrier, and they become a part of Carrier.
All right, let me see if I can track this with you. York Heating and Ventilating, Mr. Gant, brought to the package an air handling unit, a fan and a coil.
Fan coil unit package, yeah.
Okay. What's the other? Brunswick?
Brunswick Crochelle.
Brunswick Crochelle. What do they have?
They built compressors. They
And
built
what?
CO2 compressors, large compressors that yield CO2 instead of ammonia. And
And what did Carrier have at this time?
they didn't have any compressor equipment at all.
What did they have?
They had to go out and buy it on the open market until they merged with, got Brunswick Crochelle to merge with them, and got York Heating and Ventilating to merge.
Okay, so now we had compressor and air handling unit. I still can't figure out what Carrier's bringing to the table at this stage. Is he an installing contractor?
They had become manufacturers by that time, and they were looking for, they built a small package unit, getting the small package unit with
A small compressor?
the small compressors, and was with this air handling equipment that they were getting in with York Heating and Ventilating. They moved those plants up into Newark, New Jersey, and Carrier bought the old General Electric plant in Newark. And with that, they inherited Lemuel Boulware, who was the president of ASHRAE, that division of General Electric.
Say what his name is again?
Boulware.
Boulware.
Yeah.
What was his first name? Lionel?
Oh, I called it, didn't I?
Yes, Leno. Leno?
Yeah. Let's see how. Lemuel. L-E-M-M-I-E-L. Lemuel, I believe is the way you spell it. Lemuel Boulware.
Try Boulware. Try spelling Boulware.
And he was vice president, or a president, head of that General Electric plant up there. They bought the plant, and I think they made a deal of some kind with Boulware to come in as a business head. You know, Mr. Carrier was not a businessman. He didn't care anything about finances and the details of running. He was primarily interested in engineering. So they got Lemuel Boulware in as a business manager. And they started leaning toward setting up distributors. And there was a young fellow, Don Edwards, who came down here to Nashville to represent Carrier. And he was a graduate of the University of Kentucky. And I guess through J.I. Lyle, who was a graduate of the university, and Margaret Ingalls, why I imagine him being a Kentucky boy, he came from over at London, Kentucky, where he come from. His father was a banker, I believe. And Don came down here, and I got involved with him installing some air conditioning equipment they had sold the Tennessee chemical products. they started manufacturing breathing tablets, which are similar to some of the type tablets you buy now.
Breathing tablets.
Breathing. That was the brand name.
Okay.
Breathing.
And what do they do? Were they antacids or aspirin or what?
They were similar to cough drops.
Cough drops. Okay.
And they were used in the old, the plant was over in the old Cummins Station building over there. It was for sale now.
I want to pursue that name Ingalls. Was it Paul Ingalls?
Well, with Tara?
Yes.
No, it's Margaret, a lady.
No, okay, that's Margaret. But there was a fellow, you said, a young man that came to Nashville.
Oh, Don Edwards.
Okay, and it was Margaret Ingalls, okay.
Yeah, Margaret Ingalls.
Okay, they were all out
Don
of the University of Kentucky.
Yeah, Don came down here, and it's in the American Trust Building, had an office, and that's all they had.
Okay.
And he'd go out and find, call on prospects, so people wrote in carrier, they'd send them down here.
All right, now these small packaged units that you're talking about, are we into Freon for refrigeration at this stage?
No, you're not.
All right, tell me what we're into.
You're in the methyl chloride.
Methyl chloride.
Yeah.
Here's another refrigerant hurt.
And then you're in sulfur dioxide. Bridget Ash started building boxes in Kelvinator using carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide.
As a refrigerant.
As a refrigerant. The damn stuff. It's just about as tough as ammonia if you had to breathe it. But that was the first small compressors to do sulfur dioxide.
Okay, so we're packaging it. The packaging concept came from Carrier, is what you're trying to tell me, I think.
Well, yeah, that's where the package air conditioning stuff was all. But it was a huge thing. And you backed it up to a window, and most of them then, they made them with little waterproof units in it. And you hook them up on a water line and run them in the soil. But this first air conditioning job that Carrier, as I recall, did in the small equipment business was this plant manufacturing these tablets. Primarily people used them when they were drinking. They had bootleg whiskey in those days, you know.
Okay.
And they'd drink them while they'd take these breathing tablets. It was supposed to.
Spell this name of the firm.
No, it was chemical. It was the Tennessee Products Company.
Tennessee Products Company.
And they owned an iron furnace out up there, away from out there about 50 miles from there. And they were also in got into the insulation business and things like that. But somebody in their organization cooked up the idea to manufacture these tablets. So they were in the chemical business.
And say, and Breatham?
Yeah, Breatham. That was the name of it.
B-R-E-A-T-H-U-M or
E-M. B-R-E-A-T-H-E-M.
Okay, okay. Well, that's named appropriately for the purpose.
What was happening in the process was that they were sticking together. They couldn't get them packaged, and they were sticking together, and they needed chill.
Dehumidification.
To dehumidify the rooms where they were packing.
Yes.
So Carrier had made it. Don Edwards sent an order in for that. And they shipped all the equipment down there, and I helped them install it. But they didn't have any mechanics.
Tell me what it looked like. What did the equipment look like?
Well, it had a small compressor that was water cooled, and it had a big round tank with coils in it to cool the water. And then they circulated the water through the suspended units, fan coil units, to keep the room cool.
Okay, so they ran chilled water through the fan coil unit.
Yeah, they ran chilled water.
Okay, so we got sulfur dioxide as the refrigerant, being in a refrigerant loop, being water cooled.
I believe they used ammonia on that one.
Okay.
They used ammonia compressors on that one.
But it's
Chill the
basically
water.
a chiller, isn't it? A packaged chiller.
It's just like big
Water
coils,
chiller.
coils in there, and then you chill the water and circulate around those coils. It wasn't a big job, maybe 3 or 4 ton job, just to cool one room where all these units tablets were packed.
Now, were you at Nashville Machine when this occurred?
I was in that machine, and they got us to install it for them.
Okay, but you were also representing Frick.
We're representing Frick.
Yeah, but they didn't have anything packaged this small.
No,
or
they
like
didn't.
this.
Frick didn't get into that type of work at all.
Okay. Okay.
So that was one of the first air conditioning jobs I did. And the next one, most interesting job that I did, when I was still in the machine company, was Dinkler Hotel Company built by Andrew Jackson. The Andrew Jackson Hotel, a coffee shop. And pretty soon after I came to Nashville, I met the engineer who had charge of doing all the work for the Dinkler Hotel chain. The Lookout Mountain Hotel was built, and we had a contract to install all the refrigerators in Lookout Mountain Hotel. And the Dinkler Corporation, you ever hear of the Dinkler Hotel Corporation?
Well, I think I have, but I don't know it.
Well, they had hotels in Atlanta, Birmingham, Savannah, Georgia, here, and later they took on the St. Charles Hotel in New Orleans, and we had the O. Henry in Greensboro. Had a whole pretty good chain of ice cream. And when they come up there, I'd put in an ice making tank, and flying circulating system take care of all the refrigerators up in the kitchen. And when they signed the contract to take it over and operate it, they come up there and looked at it, and they had me the Dinkler people there. J.D. Powell and a bunch of financiers in Chattanooga built the Lookout Mountain Hotel. Why, I met them there, and we went up there, and they looked at it and said, well, the ice making system is just half big enough. You need to enlarge that and all the kitchen refrigerators. So when we got wound up, what I put in up there had already an order for it was just half big enough. So they just doubled the order for the equipment. And when they finished it, of course I've met all the people in Atlanta, and I got involved with the Dinkler chain on there, all that equipment. And Andrew Jackson was here, and I looked at the equipment and sold equipment up there. And they shipped a young fellow up from Atlanta and made him the chief engineer there, and Jim White. And so Mr. Giannone, who was an Italian, and he was a cousin to Mr. Dinkler. Mr. Dinkler's mother and his mother was sister. That's how he come in with fine artists. He could design and decorate anything you ever saw. But he didn't know too much about machinery. And so he and I just looked at the machinery for the Dinkler chain. And he came up there one day and he said, we need the air conditioners kept, this restaurant. Yeah. I don't know whether you feel it was here when the Andrew Jackson was running.
I don't believe so.
They had a restaurant right on the corner there on 6th Avenue. I don't know whether you was born around Nashville.
No, sir, I'm not. I'm from St. Louis prior to this.
St. Louis.
I went to school, a little school in Missouri, at Rolla, Missouri. If you got to Springfield, Missouri, you know where Rolla is.
Okay. Anyway, he come up and said, we need to cool this restaurant. He said, can't you find some equipment to cool this? And hook it up on that brine tank back there and the refrigerator. And I said, well, I think I know where there's some equipment we might get you to do it.
Okay. Let's back up our thinking a little bit. You were talking about the Andrew Jackson cafeteria.
The restaurant, the cafeteria.
And he wanted you to come off the brine system. The man knew he had cooling, but he didn't have it in a restaurant situation.
That's right.
Okay.
So I had done this work, as I may be repeating just for a minute, for Peabody College, and they had a bunch of radiators and a fan out there that they told me to get rid of. It was sitting there. And I told Mr. Giannone, I said, I know where there's a fan and some radiation we can get, and a cabinet that could all go together. And he said, let's go out there and look at it. And we went out there and looked at it. And he said, well, they got room enough that down there in the equipment room. What do you think they want for it? And I said, well, they want about $50 for all of it. Just get rid of it. He said, hell, let's buy it. Take it down and install it and hook it up on that brine tank and run some ductwork up in that, cool that coffee shop. So we bought it, took it down there and set it up, and put just common radiators now.
These are cast iron radiators.
Yeah, old time cast iron radiators, but they were built to go into a cabinet for fan heating. And we set that thing up down there and hooked it up on the brine tank and then put in another compressor. They were making ice down there then in the tank. And so we just put another compressor in to help keep that brine cold and circulate it through those radiators. And in order to keep it from freezing up, well, this manufacturer in Knoxville called a Silphon valve company, and they began to make automatic control valves. So we bought a control valve from them and hooked it up on the brine line and put the bulb of the control valve in the airstream, clamped it onto the coil so that the coils would not get cold enough to freeze up. You'd hold the coils around 48 to 50 degrees by circulating the brine through, and this automatic valve would control the amount of brine that went through there.
Was that coil the Silphon coil? Say that again.
L-C-L-Y-P-H-O-N, I believe.
All right, but it was designed to control at about 45 degrees.
You could buy them any temperature. Then you could buy them for steam. It'd be set for maintaining temperatures anywhere 60 to 100 degrees. But if you wanted for cooling and circulating brine, you buy them from 0 to 50 or 60.
And you could set it up to 45 degrees then.
And so we clamped the bulb on the outlet from the return line coming out of the coil,
Right.
so that the temperature on that return line never got below
45.
40, 45, 50 degrees. That way you didn't get any ice on your radiation. And we kept it. Ran that way for 4 or 5 years till I sold them a 5-ton carrier unit and put in there when I made this change. So that was really the first small commercial air conditioning system that went in, and that was in the late 20s, somewhere back in there.
I get the impression that I'm in the presence of not only a good engineer, but a good salesman. As another salesman, I want to know what went wrong with that job. I can't believe it was all right in roses. What things do you remember when you gave you trouble?
Actually, for some unknown reason, it worked fine and didn't have any trouble with it. But that control valve did the trick.
Yeah.
If you'd had done it by hand, there'd been no way to keep somebody running back and forth there.
So
I knew about the full Silphon company. It's been sold now to, I don't know who owns it, some other company bought it. But having an office and working on in refrigeration up in Knoxville, well, I knew, got acquainted with some of the people out there, and I knew the type of valve they were building. At that time, I guess they were the only people. Powers, I don't think, was building anything like that.
So, but the control of the brine at those temperatures was a key.
Absolutely. You got a circulating pump, a little circulating pump that pumped the brine out of the tank through these radiators. But the idea was that to have a control valve coming into the supplying the brine, set so that it would not open after it got down to 40. It was floating, just like a margin now does, and they needed range within about 3 or 4 degrees, about floating.
Sounds pretty good. Do you get a bunch of condensate off of it?
Yeah, heck, we got plenty of condensate off that thing. had it set up, with the floor drains all around it, then it was running.
All right, but now, the cabinet wasn't insulated, was it? Because it was a heating cabinet.
Yeah, it was for heating, but we re-insulated.
You put more insulation on it.
Re-insulated.
Okay. Okay, so that was, you were still with Nashville Machine?
Yeah, I'm still making that breathing job and that tough shop job was about two earliest I know of. Small air conditioning packages we put in.
Was Bouchard doing anything like that at all at the time?
They had been doing some work in that area. I think they installed, they had an old ammonia compressor installed in a field here in Nashville prior to that time. But the thing got the leaking ammonia and got out in the building, and they had to shut it down pretty easily. As I recall, it discontinued.
I see.
So they're just taking too much chance about ammonia. You know what ammonia do to you.
Yeah, to get your attention. Okay, but still in all, there were two firms here, Nashville Machine with an MT Gossett pursuing comfort cooling, the early comfort cooling.
Primarily refrigeration.
Primarily refrigeration, but you were beginning to think.
Then think air conditioning. That's right.
Yeah. Okay, let's go from there.
But Bouchard never did, until they got the bigger equipment, Bouchard never didn't get into the air conditioning as heavy as they did the refrigeration back in those at early.
Okay.
Actually, Bouchard's company become mechanical contractor long about that time when there was a lot of doing steam work and stuff like that. And they did some air conditioning job later on. I don't know much later, but they did, and they would buy equipment from other manufacturers. It wasn't a problem with building up the system or developing one back to what, in the late 20s.
There was beginning to be more packages.
Yeah.
All right, about what date, what year are we into now? Are we in 1932, 33?
I'd say we getting up about 33. And,
all right, now I think you mentioned earlier that in 1933 you left Nashville Machine.
about 19, it was 19 in the spring of 33.
Spring of 33.
Yeah.
Okay. We're heading down.
Okay. I went over and went to work for Buford Brothers. I told that I had this situation going with Carrie, and that
All right, start that story a little bit. Tell me what you were seeing there. You were at Nashville Machine, you were Frick representatives, but here's a guy out here, Carrier, beginning to package fan and coil and compressor.
yeah, getting a package unit.
And talk about
Put together.
comfort conditioning.
Yeah. Well, you see, Don Edwards, who was still here with Carrie, I told him what I wanted, and let Paul Gent know. By that time, York Heating and Ventilating had merged with Carrier, and they had begun to build package units.
What did you tell him you wanted at this time?
But I wanted to get the distributorship for Carrier.
Okay.
And so Jim White, who was engineer at Andrew Jackson, was, I believe he was president of the National NAPRE at that time, was the National Association of Power Engineers. He was president, and I was a member of the same organization, and he was elected president. And the national meeting was in Buffalo. And the group, him being president, they appointed him as a representative at the NAPRE national meeting and appointed me as a delegate, two of us to work there.
What did you do wrong to get sent to Buffalo?
Well, I was a member, and then Jim and I was in the
Yeah.
mechanical business, and being a member, well, we were allowed to get two deputies, and that'd be the president and one other. Yeah. So I made an appointment to go out to the carrier plant in Newark, New Jersey, and interview somebody. I think it's called name. I believe Graham at that time. I forgot the first man I interviewed. Anyway, through Paul Gant and Templin, who was in Atlanta as the York Heating Ventilating representative. I arranged for an appointment at a time when we were going, White and I were going to Buffalo. So he and I went to Buffalo to New York. The World Fair was going on in Chicago, so we decided to go to New York and spend 1 or 2 nights there and let me go over to Europe. Then we'd go from there to Buffalo to meet this convention. And when I got in New York, I called over there and made my appointment at Carrier Plant. Then went over and talked to the general sales manager, and also to a young fellow who was going to be a dealer, distributor, manager. And they had the national territory come under the Chicago office at that time. And the gentleman I talked to, I believe his name was Graham, and he was there from Chicago. That's right, he happened to be there. And a fellow named Pickle, who was a brother to Frederick Morris. You ever hear Frederick Morris, the movie star? You didn't?
All right. In those days, it was Frederick March.
Yeah. That is one of the most famous actors of his day. He did a lot of their fine movies. And the question, after I got through talking and told them what I wanted, they said, well, have you got somebody that will vacuum this thing? And I'd already made arrangements with you brothers go around and go to work for them. Told them I thought we could get the carrier franchise. And they said, what do you want in the way of a salary? I said, I don't want a salary. I said, we'll work out a commission book. And you give me a desk and a secretary. For instance, an office and secretary. And I'll come over and go to work and see what we can do with this carrier account if we can get it. So I went out to New York and interviewed the right people over there, and they said, well, you need to talk to Mr. Grimm out in Chicago. He's going back to Chicago. You need to talk to him further about it. And then if we work out something, we'll send man down to Nashville and before the situation. So Jim White and I then left and went on to Buffalo and attended the engineers meeting. And then left and went from there to Chicago. He had 2 weeks off. So we went to Chicago, the World's Fair in 1933, right? And they went out to the World's Fair, and his wife and a friend of mine, girlfriend of mine, I wasn't married yet, and they went out to the fair, and I said, well, I'm going to see Carrie today anyway. By the time I'll go to the fair tomorrow. So I went over and talked to Carrie, and they said, well, okay, so we'll have somebody down and talk to you and see what we can work out. But we'd like to have somebody down there. We've had some experience in it, and it's good. So it was, I think that was in August. And in September, they called me and said that Mr. Bickle would be in to talk to me, and Mr. Hearn up at the American National Bank was it was running the affairs of Buford Brothers. They had the president of Buford Brothers, Lloyd Smith, and Mr. Hearn was bankrolling things because they'd gotten in financial problems, but he got it squared away pretty good. So Mr. Bickle come down, and I took him down, and we had a conference, and Mr. Hearn told what he wanted, and he said, well, if you could bankroll this thing, well, we'll go along with it.
What kind of business was Buford Brothers in at this time?
They were in the mill supply business, supplies and automotive equipment.
Pipe?
They didn't get into pipe, but they were primarily into supplies for buildings and the automotive industry. And blacksmith supplies and all sorts of stuff like that.
They weren't in the refrigeration compressor machinery
No.
business, not at all like National.
I set up an engineering department for them, that's what we call it, engineering division.
Okay, let me back up there. When you mentioned engineering, through all of this, I haven't heard any college or degrees. I hear hands-on engineering.
That's
that
what
true?
it is, hands-on, no kidding.
That's the way it went. Well, there's nothing wrong with that education. It's off in the desk.
Anyway, he come down there and made the arrangements up there in the back. They took care of anything we wanted to buy and needed. So we went down to the Gift Brothers and up to my office and sat down. And they didn't have a hell of a lot to sell right at that time. But I remember when we got through, we bought a couple of these package units they were building. And I had a job at dealing with ammonia compressor on it, and a milk plant out in Nolensville. And we wound up with an order for about $1,200 or $1,500, that's all. And we gave them a purchase order for it, and that was the start of the thing. And that was in 1933. So, in that fall, during the summer of '33, while I was at National Machine Gun, I went to Memphis to bid on an air conditioning job for the B&W cafeteria. They opened the B&W here in Nashville in 1930. And I installed the refrigeration equipment for them in the cafeteria. And then one of the partners, Mr. Burris, who was a B in B&W, they decided they would go to Memphis and open the cafeteria there. And so they went down and opened this cafeteria there, and they decided that they were going to air condition it. And I went down and bid on it using Frick compressors. And at that time, Frick had been started building a compressor that you could use Freon. And York was building one that you could use Freon. They took the old ammonia compressors and just adopted the main thing of the shaft seal to keep the Freon from leaking out. And I went down, and while I was there, I met Ned Murphy from Chicago, he was down there bidding on it for Carrier, and I was bidding on it for using Frick equipment. And York was in there bidding on it using York equipment. And the only mechanical engineers that I know of at that time was Allen and Hoschel in Memphis. And Allen, I'd been bidding on jobs that he laid out while I was in Memphis. And I knew that he always went to York. I think York helped him design the job of what I think was going on. Anyway, when we bid the job down in Memphis, well, I wound up going to York. And Allen and Hoschel were engineers, and I told Mr. Murphy, I said, I don't think you are even want to make a change to get this job. I said, Allen and Hoschel, they just favor York in this area. That's where I met Ned Murphy, who was at that time one of the four men who had developed Carrier.
Ned Murphy. The compressor, before you leave that, you mentioned a shaft seal. Were these direct drive compressors with the motor outside of the compressor?
No, they were V-belt drive. That V-belt drive. Use a motor and a V-belt package on it.
Okay, so but the two pieces of gear, the motor and the compressor, were separate pieces.
Yeah,
Separate
that's
pieces.
a pretty good sized piece of machinery,
Yeah.
but that was about a 35, 40 ton air conditioning system. Well, 40 tons, you know.
That's a good sized piece of gear.
Well, that's right. It takes about a 50, 60 horsepower motor. Just do it with one compressor.
How did you deal with the part load requirements? Did you have unloaders and that sort of thing?
They had an unloader valve installed in it, and you used a thermostat on the return air to cycle the compressor. And you had to use automatic type starters that had overload protection built in on them.
Okay.
But
So you didn't get the B&W in Memphis?
didn't get the BMW job. So Mr. Weber and I come on, and we rode down there and back together. Weber here was the partner, the W here, and the B for us was the partner. So we come on back, and they got the B&W going here, and that was in early in 33. And late in 33 was when I went on over to Buford. Then we started talking to John about doing the B&W
Here.
here.
All right, now they enter some more players here at this stage.
Yeah.
So tell me who the players were at the B&W.
Well, on that particular job, there wasn't but 2 hours of business. But you mean the design of it?
Well, yeah, who are the people that were competing for the B&W cafeteria?
It was York out of Memphis
Okay.
and Buford Brothers here. There was only 2 bids they had. But anyway, we laid that job out. Templin, who was then, York Heating and Ventilating, they knew the ventilating engineering and the air handling part. And Templin from Atlanta came up, and he and I sat down and we figured out how much air it would take to do the job. And then we figured out the amount of square foot area and the people load, put that all down, exposure, the building, and so on, and rise it to 20. And then we had to go up and lay out all the ductwork, and lay out the duct system, the fans, and so on. But we had to do a complete engineering job on that, get it set up. There were no more engineers in there. New York come in with their own design.
Okay. Were the tonnages comparable?
Yeah.
In other words, you both come to
we
the same
worked out the
conclusion.
tonnage, worked out about the same. But there was no engineering company involved in it. It was just a question of whether York was,
The better new.
what they wanted competitive bidding on. And so we got our job worked out. At that time, Cara had started building small compressors. And this job required 40 tons, so we divided that into 4 10 horsepower compressors. So we could cycle the compressors with the load. And it was in April of 34 when we got this thing all figured out to bid on.
Okay. Then you got that job.
Yeah, and the York guy come up from Memphis, and you might have heard me say this at the meeting the night we were up there at Herndon. Anyway, York come in and submitted their bid, and he stayed overnight, and I submitted my bid the same day. They said, well, they'd make a decision next morning. And the carrier sales meeting was, or national sales meeting, was starting in Europe over the next day or two after that. It was close enough that the next morning when they were going to make a decision, I had to just frame of that afternoon and go
Start
and go by the way of Chattanooga and up to New York. Up to New York. So I told them that day, that night, I was the last when they talked to me. They talked to York first, and then they talked to me. And he said, well, we're going to make a decision. And I said, could you possibly make a decision by 10 o'clock in the morning? And he said, why? I said, well, I'm going to Newark, New Jersey to a national sales meeting to carry, and I'd like to take this all the way. You know why I would.
Yes.
And he said, yeah, we'll let you know. We'll call you in the morning about 10 o'clock. So they called me and said, well, if you want this contract, come on up here. So I went up there and had the contract all on. I thought we was going to supply, set a plan and everything. Then they signed the order and said, well, you want any money? I said, no, we don't need any money. And after got it all signed up, and I thanked him. And Mr. Weber said, what am I going to tell this short guy? And then said, I got to tell him that he's giving you the job. I said, well, when you tell him, I said, just tell him, I said, it wasn't in his father from here back to Memphis, and it was from Memphis back here when I lost that job in that place. And he laughed. Well, I said, that's what I'm going to tell him.
Ah, yes, I am in the presence of a master salesman. Very good.
But anyway, I took that job on up and went into the sales meeting, and I was the only man that brought in an order.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That made points.
So it made points.
Yes.
It made some points, and that's where the B&W job started.
Okay.
Now, where did it go from there?
Well, I don't know.
We got the B&W job in the factory, and then the building equipment. And that consisted of two of those York heating and ventilated type
Air handling units.
air handling units. We had a bank of air fan coils. They were using air coils manufactured by air fan.
Are these plate thin coils now? They're no longer radiators anymore.
No more a thin coil.
Okay.
And so they were already building them with the steam coils for heating. So all we had to do was slide in a set of cooling coils right on top of them, just put in another section and size the fan unit to handle them out of air removal. They handled they were handling about 6,000 CFM air each, and we needed about 12,000 CFM to do the upstairs public rooms and downstairs to maintain too. So that made it fairly simple then, because you could get the stuff sized down the way you could get it in place.
Physically put it in the building.
Yeah.
Now, at our anniversary banquet, it seems to me I.C. Thomason talked about being involved in the installation of the compressors in the B&W cafeteria.
And that's what happened. Thomason was over at the Nashville Pure Milk Company as engineer. And we'd been doing work out there. In fact, we put some York heating and ventilated heater units in out. I'd also put one quick compressor into my in a wine chiller and cooling milk and stuff like that. And I.C. Thompson was his engineer. Well, when I got all the equipment in, I didn't have two men down there. Actually, one man could do installation work, but we hadn't got enough jobs to get in town to crew. So I needed some, and the only time we could do it was night, because the cafeteria had to run in the daytime. We couldn't interfere with operation. So we got a contractor who would do all the building modifications and put in the steel, had the size of steel to put. But I didn't have enough help to do the job. So I went out and asked him up and told Connie, I said, you want to work something at night? He said, what?
Something about going to Tommy, who was I.C. Thomason,
Yeah.
and asking him if he'd want to work at night installing the equipment.
Yeah, well, so he did, and he came down, and my one mechanic, a fellow named Barclay, And he and I, the three of us, installed it, working at night.
Okay, so we
It
got,
was already designed, and then sheet metal, we let a sheet metal contractor to I believe it was H.E. Farmer, or R.D. Herbert one, I forget which one. But anyway, we let a subcontractor do sheet metal out to put in all the ductwork. And all that had to be done at night, and the contractor had to put in all the steel and cut the right-of-ways out to get the ductwork in and stuff like that.
okay, so we've got two 6,000 CFM air handling units,
So that's right.
and we've got two packaged compressor units that match up with them, each with a,
No, what we did, we put split coils in each unit. In other words, you had two sets of coils
okay,
in each unit. Then we had 4 compressors, so we connected 2 compressors. The compressors separately. You couldn't hook them up together. You
right,
had to keep the
separate
separate.
refrigeration circuit,
Yeah,
okay,
you had 1 circuit for each compressor,
okay,
and 2 coils in each area.
okay, all right. And so, but the compressors now, were they water cooled?
No, they were air cooled. The ammonia compressors had to have water jackets on.
Okay, but these were now Freon compressors.
The Freon compressors, you didn't have to run water through the compressor, but you had to run water through the condenser.
Okay, so but it was a water-cooled condenser.
Yeah, that water-cooled condenser.
Were you using city water, rejecting it to the city?
No, I designed a cooling tower, and we built it over at the sheet metal plant. And we put a cooling tower on the roof and a water pump to circulate water through those condensers.
Were the slats in the cooling tower metal then?
They're metal, but it had the slats on the side. I don't know whether you've seen some of these
Yeah.
cool, well, that's right.
Yeah.
It was a slatted 1 to 4 strap tower. Didn't have a fan on it. It was gravity.
Cascade.
Yeah.
Cascade. How long did it work like that?
Oh, that cooling tower, I guess for 25 years. We didn't renew it. It lasted about 25 years. Then we put in a conventional cooling tower, which the equipment was still running when they closed the cafeteria down. We've been running, let's see, it's been about 32, 43. It ran about 40 years before they bought that property down and took the bid and everything down.
Okay, so this was about, except for your initial order of $1,200 worth of little packaged equipment, this order for the B&W cafeteria was very much the early equipment that you sold to carriers.
That was the first real nice big order we got in. I'd say it was some maybe $12,000, $14,000 for compressors and air handling stuff.
You made money on it?
Yeah, they did money. The total price of the job. By the way, my contract with Buford Brothers was no salary. But I worked for them 40% of the gross profit. That's the way I went in. They furnished me a desk and secretary.
That's how you started.
Then we had, of course, they furnished a shop, truck, and things we had to have. But when we do a job, well, we kept an active cost on it. When we wound it up and finished, whatever the gross profit was, that'd be my commission, 40%.
Okay. Say that again about Mark Young. We just getting back into this, and I asked MT about Mark Young and what he meant to the early days of refrigeration. Say that again.
Well, when I came to Nashville, of course, the National Machine Company, Mark Young was head of the electrical department, and as we gradually got into the refrigeration business, automatic controls were just beginning to be developed for the refrigeration industry. And if we had a problem, a job we had sold and had automatic controls on it, we would just tell Mark Young what we wanted to do and how we wanted it to work. And he would get him out a piece of paper and he wouldn't be with a few minutes. But he'd have it all laid out just like it needed to go in. And when the job was ready to be wired up and put in operation, well, Mark would go on the job and do it, and you didn't have to worry about it working, it'd work. We got some old jobs in trouble, while he'd go and straighten those out.
It's a good thing to be able to say about somebody that his jobs worked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was so impressed by Mark Young when we sat here, and that inquiring mind.
And I think the elevator department used him the same way. When they installed elevators, he could look at it.
Anything that was a control problem, he knew how to fix it.
Yeah.
Do it, get it right.
And then while we're on that subject, we were selling, Mr. Kuhn was primarily the one that did the selling on Skinner Uniflow engines and electrical generators. And there again, Mark Young just fit right into the pattern because they had switchgear and panels on these electric generators that had to be taken care of and wired up. So he worked in all phases of National Machine Company, from elevators, air conditioning, and steam generators back in the early days.
It sounded like he was an MVP, a most valuable player for National Machine.
I don't know if you ever saw a Skinner Uniflow engine or not.
No, sir, I haven't.
They were almost beautiful. They were a Cadillac, the steam engine. Most beautiful operating machine, I think, a piece of steam machine I think I ever used around.
Where did they use them? Are there any of them?
Yeah, well, I know while I was down there, two of the outstanding jobs we did was the Stallman building. They put some new boilers and steam and Uniflow Skinner engines in there, and over at National Light.
And what were they doing with these engines?
They were generating all their own power for lighting and driving all the motors in the buildings.
Ah, okay. Were these single?
Back in those days, the power systems were not heavy enough to carry the big loads
That a big building
the
imposed?
big required, except at such an expense that it's cheaper to own your own generating equipment. Didn't have any TVA back in those days. Most of these big plants, industrial plants, had their own power generating system.
Okay.
Most of them were coal-fired.
So that's why Nashville got all this reputation for having all this coal smoke in the air.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to the B&W cafeteria. You had yourself and a mechanic that you work with, say his name again, Baker? Barclay, and I.C. Thomason, who you commandeered off of a job where he was working because he was good in refrigeration and you wanted to work him at night, or you gave him the opportunity to help you install this first system at night.
Right.
Right. All right, now come from there to the beginning of consulting engineering in this town as we know it. Tommy was obviously one of the early mechanical consultants, but this was before there was consulting.
Well, when we finished the B&W cafeteria, of course, Nashville, the business people from all around were going in there and having lunch and dinner and enjoying the comforts of that air conditioning. And right away it started building a demand for air conditioning in Nashville because enjoying that comfort made people realize how important it was. And I think that there was not an engineering concern in Nashville who did air conditioning design, air conditioning heating. The nearest was one in Memphis, and I think and one in Atlanta. That was the closest source.
That was Allen and Hoschel in Memphis and
Newcomb and
Newcomb and Boyd in Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Okay.
And that was the only two people concerned near Nashville. Might have been some in Cincinnati. That was the source of supply for engineering.
Did you ever know a guy by the name of John D. Falvey in St. Louis? Did you ever hear that name?
No.
Okay, well, he was one of those steam lovers, and he did a lot of jobs in St. Louis with steam.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, now, Tate Engineering Company, I had some experience with them out of St. Louis. It was the Tate family who was in the engineering business there, and they also were freight agents for distributors, like National Machines. And the headquarters of the St. Thomas Hospital, the mother is in St. Louis.
Daughters of Charity is headquartered
And the
in St.
Tates
Louis.
did a lot of work for the hospital, and they sold a refrigeration job to the St. Thomas here in Nashville. And my brother worked for Tate after he left the Hoosier Ice Machine Works. My brother was working for Tate over in Indiana. And Tate sold this job to St. Thomas Hospital, and we helped install that, being the local freight distributors. We helped install that job over there. And they also, we had been in there and installed a Uniflow steam engine out there for them to generate power for the St. Thomas.
Okay, we'll get back to B&W and what was happening after that.
Well, as I say, there were no engineers here. And when we finished the B&W cafeteria, they had just, not too long after that, the Supreme Court building installed an air conditioning system up there. And I think we bid on the job. Some other contractor got it using freight equipment. And General Beeler, he was the Attorney General, Supreme Court, and he had charge of the buildings and the Supreme Court building. And he eated the B&W cafeteria quite often. And when they was finishing up a job up there, Mr. Weber, I was up there for lunch one day, and he said, General Beeler wants to see you. I said, "You want to see me about it?" I said, "I don't know, he just asked if you'd been in there for lunch, and he wants to see you." So he says, "He'll be back there tomorrow. Why don't you come up here about that time?" And I went back the next day for lunch, and General Beeler was there, and so he come over and said, "Well, when General Beeler gets through lunch, he wants to talk to you." And he come over and he said, "I've got to have an engineer up at the Supreme Court building, and I've got 4 or 5 applications here for a job, and I wanted you to look at them and see who you thought on that list would make us a good engineer for the particular building." And so I looked along down there, and I got down there, about the 3rd man down was I.C. Thomas. And I just took the pencil out and wrote a circle, and I said, "There's your man." And I don't know whether I ever told Tommy that or not. I don't know if Tommy knows that or not.
Oh, is that right?
Because I never did tell him how it come about. I don't believe I ever told him. I might have in the last few years, I've forgotten. Anyway, he called Tommy up and hired him. And Tommy took over the Supreme Court building and operated.
Okay, but they had then an air conditioning system.
Yeah, they had an air conditioning system ready to go.
Okay.
So Tommy I guess he arranged for the space up there in the basement of the Supreme Court building. But they had a lot of space down there, and he's petitioned all the space up there. And he started designing engineering, they're doing engineering work on air conditioning system, air conditioning heating. And that's where he started in the business.
Was he doing state buildings then, other buildings
Yeah.
for the state?
Well,
that sort of thing?
he had some arrangement with the state where he was looking at the Supreme Court building, and then he was designing equipment for other buildings. Then he got Don Nichols, who's over there. Oh, you know Don.
Yes, yes, sir.
Well, Don, I think, come over and went to work for him while he was there in that office. And in addition to doing the state work, by doing some independent engineering. So that's where he started.
That's neat. That's super. That's super. Did you know when we had our 25th anniversary, there's a fellow in there named George Campbell who is out of Chattanooga that, the way I understand it, he claims to have preceded Tommy as far as being in the consulting business here, but he was in a war or went into service, and when he came back, Tommy was already established, so George went to Chattanooga. I think George was an electrical engineer.
Well, I think he was too, but I believe he branched out into the mechanical.
Well, I know he did while he was in Chattanooga, but I think what he did prior, in the early days here in Nashville was electrical, and I don't know if he fits into any of your stories or recollections of those times.
We did a lot of trips forward. Claire didn't have anybody working in Chattanooga. We did a lot of air conditioning in Chattanooga.
I see.
We was working Nashville and Chattanooga both. And Campbell, I don't remember the name, but nearly all the systems we did then, we designed ourselves. We didn't do it.
Okay, there wasn't a consulting engineering role.
There wasn't a consulting engineer. And a lot of times, the size of the jobs wouldn't justify consulting. Like 40 or 50 or 100-ton job. So we did all our own design work actually up to as long as we had to carry things.
All right, so you're still with Buford Brothers, and you're talking packaged air conditioning, and it's beginning to pick up in Nashville. You're getting people who want to air condition different spaces.
Yeah, we did the American National Bank first job for their accounting department. I believe that was the first bank in Nashville. Anyway, this was where all the accounting work was done. You know how hot it can be where there's a bunch of electrical stuff going, add machines, one thing and another, and plenty of light. And they wanted their third floor done, which was where all the bookkeeping was. And we designed, did that job. But incidentally, Andy Benedict, who retired president, chairman of the board after that. I've got a picture of that job. I had one with Andy sitting at an adding machine. He started out when he graduated from Vanderbilt in the bookkeeping department down there. And I gave him, I framed that picture and sent it to him when he became president
Of the bank.
of the bank. And I just wrote on, typed on the bottom of it, on one side I said, "Young man on his way." And over here I said, "Congratulations on your success." And he made a fail.
I bet he treasured that.
He's got it.
I bet he treasured that.
I found it. I think I found it after he became president. I just happened to be rambling around one day on some pictures that I'd taken the job. And I said, "No, Andy ought to have that."
We've got just a little bit of tape left here, I think. We're doing pretty well. Let's talk about Willis Carrier. And your recollections of him and Margaret Ingalls?
Oh, yes, let's tie him into being Judge's job.
Okay.
After we got the being Judge's job started in the summer, that sometime during the winter time, I don't remember exactly when it was, Mr. Carroll was making a trip to the South, and we arranged for him to come to Nashville and set up a dinner at a luncheon, and invited him quite a number of all the businessmen that I knew around. I thought would enjoy listen to him talk about the development of air conditioning. And we had one little steam coil out on one of those duct lines up there that hadn't been forming just like it should. And we thought we had the thing piped okay to do it. And he said, well, you got any troubles with the job? Is it working all right? I said, working fine. It's just got one little steam coil up there on a duct line going over to the front office. The darn thing it just quits heating sometimes. We haven't got it straightened out. And I was having breakfast with him up there. And he said, well, come on, let's go up there and look at it and see the problem. We went up there and looked at it, and he stood there and he said, there's the trouble right up there. That air vent you got is not high enough above the coil. And you hook it on at a little different, on the return line, a little further down the return line to get the air vent, to vent the air out of the steam coil. So you can change that into the air vent. So the next day, he just went on and had our luncheon. He had a nice attendance. Well, I think I still got a list of all the people that attended that luncheon.
That would be an interesting thing to have.
I believe I had it somewhere. I think I run across it. And so after he left sometime in the evening on the train all the way, went on to Atlanta where he went to. He was making a trip down south. Next day we got up and changed it, put a new vent on that thing, typed it like you said, we never had no minute's trouble with it. So
well, you made money on that visit no matter what.
yeah, so we had a nice meeting with him.
What kinds of things would he tell people at that stage? What was his tips or his gospel?
He being primarily interested in engineering, he liked to talk about the development of things. And one of the things he talked about a great deal at that time was, it was very interesting, was the development of the air conditioning business in South Africa and the coal and diamond mines. You know, he personally went down there and did a lot of design work in the diamond and coal mines and gold mines in South Africa.
Those things are tough. That's
when it's 150 degrees down in below ground, people trying to work down there. I remember one funny thing that happened one time along while Mr. Carey was still very active. He had gone to South Africa to do some engineering work, and had been down there maybe a month or whatever period of time it took him to do the job. And about the time that he was due to leave down there, something come up they needed to get in touch with him. And they called Johannesburg, I believe it was, and the hotel where he'd been staying, he'd already checked out. Well, they checked the steamship line if they thought he'd be coming back on. And he wasn't on, he hadn't left on that ship. So they couldn't find him. They didn't know where the heck he was. So somebody cooked up the idea that he'd probably taken another ship, and they just didn't know where to go for him. And so it was several days, and they knew he had left down there. And when they finally come in, they found out what he'd done. He had taken a slow boat out of South Africa, an old freighter on which they had accommodation, And he had worked out all the problems that they had in that job that he went down there on. He spent his time on board ship.
Working up the engineering.
Working engineering on that particular trip for what it's going to take to do the job. Take care. So I was going to tell you, a slow boat from Africa.
A slow boat from Africa. If they had perishables on board, he probably was trying to sell them some onboard cooling.
Probably.
Marine cooling.
Yeah. But I just happened to think of that experience. Yeah. That's the sort of fellow he was. He was primarily an engineer and a very fine gentleman.
How old was he at this time when he was here in 1934?
Oh, I would say that he was in his, I remember when he died, I think it was 1950. Because I was president of the Kiwanis Club and I was at a meeting in Chattanooga. When I got word that he had died, I called my office and called a friend of mine in Memphis who was a fair distributor over there and told him that he was going. I said, I'll meet you in Syracuse because I'm going to the funeral. And I called my office and told him to take some extra clothes out and give them to American Airlines. And tell them to leave them in the ticket office. Buffalo, because they had a flight going to Buffalo. Tell them who they're for and put my name on it. So I called the plane out of Chattanooga and went up there. And when I got off the plane in Buffalo, I was American Airlines. They had my full thing. And I went to the funeral and it was very sad.
What time of the year was it? Because I was born in Buffalo, New York.
You were.
So I know when they have winter up there, they.
Did I say Buffalo?
Yeah.
Oh.
Syracuse.
I don't know where he was buried. He might have been, but the funeral was in Syracuse.
Funeral was in Syracuse,
Yeah.
but you flew into Buffalo to get
No.
to Syracuse.
No, I flew into Syracuse.
Okay.
That's
I'm
right.
sorry.
But anyway, when I got in Syracuse, because I've been flying back and forth to Syracuse a whole lot on American Airlines. I go through New York and I always go through Cincinnati. So,
But it was wintertime or summertime?
I think it must have been in the early spring. I've forgotten now. I know it was cold. It wasn't too cold, but it was bad. Some bad. You could have bad weather up there.
Well, let's back up a little with Mr. Carrier. You had him visit here in Nashville. He looked over your B&W cafeteria job and gave a little talk there to businessmen.
Yeah.
But you evidently had an association with him that developed from there and lasted several years.
Oh, well, all during the rest of his life. And I've got a picture of him. He and Margaret Ingalls in their backyard where I visited him not long before. It was in the summer, I think, before he died. I was in Syracuse and I went out to Cherry Valley where he lived to visit with him. He and Margaret Ingalls were out in the backyard there, and he showed him working on some problems. And I visited with him for a while. I asked him then, I said, what are you all working on? He said, well, we're working trying to develop a small centrifugal machine that would be tended to see us. The centrifugals they have, even today, usually are now economical under maybe 100, 150 tons. And he was trying to develop a little small centrifugal that you could probably, 2 men could pick it up and carry it around and produce 25 tons of air conditioning. But I don't imagine he ever got it finished up. Well, I didn't hear any more about it. Well, I have a nice picture with him there. And I didn't see him anymore after that trip. But all during the years that I was going in and out of Cherokee, I always visited.